Two very different sorts of change. You might argue almost polar opposite change, but they voted for change, and the challenge for the new government will be to deliver that change. I think that Rhys ap Iorwerth is ready to do that. I think he's done a very good job of bringing Plaid Cymru together as a team, certainly looking at the campaign from the outside, which is what I've been doing. I haven't felt a buzz for Plaid like this since 1999. I think inevitably the decline of Labour will be the story that will be on the front page of the newspapers, but actually what matters to the people of Wales is what happens next.
We have got a state of the parties graphic here we can show you now, and I was going to ask you, Matthew, essentially I was struck by what Dan showed us earlier, really, of those who's coming first and second. So we do have two-party politics, but not as we know it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've gone from two-party politics of Labour and the Conservative Party dominating Wales for the last 100 years to Reform and Plaid now dominating across Wales. And
yeah, a huge surge in your vote share there, 27% up across the country.
I mean, Plaid have been in a lot of these communities for decades, with councillors, with Senedd members, with MPs. They've got a lot of infrastructure.
18 months ago, where was your party?
18 months ago, we had, we were just about setting up our branch structure in Wales. We had one member of staff. We obviously fought the Caerphilly by-election and got a solid result. But, from where we've come, today, our vote share gain is far higher than Plaid Cymru's.
Helen, there has been a vote for change so far. How does the next government bring, if these predictions are correct, if John Curtis is right, it looks like Plaid's leaning towards minority government, potentially with, might only need to work with the Greens, perhaps, then to have that minority government might not even need to work with Labour. But how do you, still a great proportion of the country have voted for change, and their vision for change is Reform's vote for change. So how do you unite Wales after such a divisive election?
I think that's going to be a big challenge. I think Green and his team are up for that. And I think the way you deal with that is by delivering the change that people want from the perspective...
I'm going to have to interrupt you, Helen, because I am told that Eluned Morgan is speaking at the moment, so let's hear from her.
We need to take a really hard look at itself and understand the depth of the challenge that we face. I've lost my seat here in Ceredigion-Pembro, and I will be stepping down as leader of Welsh Labour. I take responsibility for the Labour result in Wales. I'd like to thank the members of this constituency in the Labour Party, but members across the whole of Wales in the Labour Party for their tireless efforts over the past few months and years. This vote is not a reflection of your efforts. I'd like to thank the volunteers and all the extraordinary efforts of people up and down the country. Thank you for your trust and your kindness and your honesty over several years. Thank you also to my fellow candidates who've worked extremely hard. I'm very proud of what Welsh Labour has achieved over all the years we've led in the Senedd. But today, the pressures on public services are enormous. That change is clearly not coming fast enough. We're living in turbulent times. There are challenges in all directions. Many expect simple answers to very complex questions. But there are no simple answers, and the budgets are limited. The age of two-party dominance is dead. We need to recognise that multiple parties are now in contention across Wales. Social media has changed the way we do our politics. It sets the political narrative away from cameras and directly into people's homes and living rooms. The electoral system clearly caused some confusion, but many people heeded and heard that message: if you want to stop reform, then vote Plaid. The people of Wales rejected Welsh Labour. I would like to congratulate Plaid Cymru on their momentous success. And if they form the new government of Wales, I know that we will all want to see very stable, clear leadership that is serious and stable. We all want Wales to succeed. Reform has made substantial gains in Wales. We all understand the anger, but Wales is stronger when we stand together. We need to heed the anger, not feed the anger. Being First Minister of Wales has been the privilege of my life, and particularly so as the first woman to lead this nation. I've been proud under my term of office to see waiting lists come down for 9 months in succession, rail services improve, record inward investment, women's health hubs. But today politics is faster and harder. It rewards noise over truth. And we need to understand that world, but we need to hold on to our values. Our values in the Labour Party are those of fairness, solidarity and community. It is clear that results across the whole of the United Kingdom have demonstrated deep frustration with the Labour Party. We need to go back to being the party of the working class. We need the Labour government nationally to change course. We need the wealth of this nation to be more equally distributed away from the southeast. But I was always clear that this election was about Wales and Keir Starmer was not on the ballot. I am taking responsibility and I am resigning. Finally, here in West Wales, we live in a place where you learn to ride out the storms. The wind in Wales has shifted from a breeze to a gale. The old certainties have been swept aside and our defences were shattered. We know in the Labour Party we have tough days ahead, but we are confident that the sun will shine again. I wish the very best to the people who will lead this incredible nation. Mae Plaid Lafur Cymru wedi gweld canlyniadau trychinebus. Mi fydda i'n sefyll lawr fel arweinydd y Blaid Lafur, hoffwn ni longyfarch Plaid Cymru a Reform. Yn amlwg, mae rhaid i ni feddwl yn ddwys yn ein Plaid Lafur ni am beth mae'r dyfodol yn edrych fel. Mae wedi bod yn anrhydedd o'r mwyaf i fod yn brif weinidog Cymru. A dwi'n dymuno pob lwc i'r bobl sy'n arwen.
OK, there it is, the resignation speech from the First Minister, Eluned Morgan, former First Minister. I think she's still First Minister for a few days. And it was, I don't think she was angry. She was certainly resigned, held it together, talked about the party, Labour Party needs to be the party again of the working classes. The national government needs to, the Labour Party needs to change course. The old certainties swept aside. Felicity, go on.
Yeah, a little bit of a swipe there, I think, at some of the parties in the campaign, where she said there are no simple answers and the budget is limited. I think she was there, you know, suggesting that that Labour's manifesto offer was the most modest of all the manifesto offers, really, and a lot of the parties. Costings was a big issue, of course, during the course of the campaign. Eluned Morgan there suggesting, I think, that perhaps there was a lot of over-promising by some of the other parties without any explanation of exactly what the trade-off would be to provide.
No simple answers to complex questions, wasn't it? Let's bring some different voices here on this. I'm delighted to say Vaughan Roderick, our Welsh Affairs editor, is with us. And Simon Hart, former Conservative Secretary of State for Wales as well, is with us. Vaughan, let's start with you. I mean, you've seen some elections over the years.
I've seen some elections, but nothing quite like this. You know, the size of the Labour collapse, when you look at those valley seats where they're desperately scrabbling for the sixth seat in places that used to return Labour with majorities of 20 or 30,000. It is extraordinary, but I think it's pretty clear what's happened. And it all goes back to the Caerphilly by-election, where that established in voters' minds that if they regarded this as an election or a referendum about reform, if you support reform, you vote reform. If you oppose reform, you vote Plaid. I mean, that's what, I mean, it's extraordinary when you look at Plaid winning 6 seats in Cardiff, which is more than the total number of council seats they've ever won in Cardiff.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it is.
It's an amazing stat, isn't it?
And I think it's more of an anti-reform vote. I think progressive votes have consolidated behind Plaid Cymru. The sidebar to that is what's happened with the Conservatives, and it'll be interesting to hear what's happened. You know, the Conservatives have collapsed, but not totally. You know, they've hung on to a viable group in the Senedd, whereas at one time the polls were saying, oh, they were down to 1 or 2. You know, it's a smaller group than they had before in a bigger Senedd. But it could be a pretty crucial group when it comes to a Plaid Cymru minority government trying to pass a budget, for instance.
Simon, I will bring you in because it'll be interesting to get your thoughts. But we have another declaration, and they're all coming now, and this is Connor's key.
An individual candidate as follows. Caedwadwyr Cymraeg, Welsh Conservatives, 16,193, 16,193. Green Party, Plaid Wyrth, 4,219, 4,219. Heritage Party, 3,512, 352. Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, 22,583, 22,583. Reform UK, 25,741, 25,741. Welsh Labour, Clafur Cymru, 8,314, 8,314. Welsh Liberal Democrats, Democratiaid Rhyd Ffrydl Cymru, 2,355, 2,355. Cyfanswm nifer y pleidleisiau y fwriwyd ar draws Clwyd 8. 79,757, and the total number of valid votes cast across Clwyd was 79,757. Cyfanswm nifer y papurau pleidleisio ar fodwydd 8, 166. The total number of ballot papers rejected was 166. Felly rwy'n datganfod seddi yn y Senedd ar gyfer etholaeth Clwyd wedi dyrannu i'r ymgeiswyr unigol a'r ymgeiswyr rhest Plaid canlynol. Therefore, I declare the following individual candidates and party list candidates have been allocated a seat in the Senedd for the Clwyd constituency. Sydd 1, Reform UK, Adrian Gwyn Mason. Sydd 2, Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, Clear Griffith. Sydd 3, Ceidwadwyr Cymraeg, Welsh Conservatives, Darren David Miller. Seth Pedwar, Reform UK, Louise Gale Emery. Seth Pimp, Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, Becca Martin. Seth Quirk, Reform UK, Thomas Brian Montgomery. A throi hi'n rhywun datgan bod yr ymgeiswyr uchod wedi iawn ethol fel elodau.
Okay, so that's the result from Clwyd. So 3 for Reform, 2 for Plaid Cymru, 1 for the Conservatives. So that's Darren Miller, the leader of the Welsh Conservatives, been returned there. He was confident earlier, wasn't he, when we spoke to him? So this is just a bit about the geography. This is parts of the old Clwyd South, Delyn, Clwyd West, Vale of Clwyd, comes in from areas like Rhyl and Prestatyn, and then comes inland to areas like Llangollen, one of these big constituencies. Right, I'm sorry, they're relentless at the moment. We're going to go to Brycheiniog Tawynedd and Builth Wells.
For the Brycheiniog Tawynedd constituency, declare that the number of votes recorded for each political party and individual candidate is as follows.
Yr wyf fi, Emma Palmer, swyddog canlyniadau ar gyfer etholaeth Brycheiniog Tawynedd yn datgan bod nifer y pleidleisiau a gofnodwyd ar gyfer pob plaid wleidyddol ac ymgeisydd unigol fel a ganlyn.
Welsh Conservatives, 6,821.
Ceidwadwyr Cymreig, 6,821.
Gwlad Wales Can Be Better, 204.
Gwlad Gall Cymru fod yn well, 204.
Heritage Party, 275.
Plaid Dreftadaeth, 275.
Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, 23,276.
Plaid Cymru, 23,276.
Reform UK Wales, 26,897.
Reform UK Cymru, 26,897.
Wales Green Party, 5,405.
Plaid Werdd Cymru, 5,405.
Welsh Christian Party, proclaiming Christ's Lordship, 456.
Plaid Gristnogol Cymru, datgan ar glwyddiaeth Crist, 456.
Welsh Labour, 7,086.
Llafur Cymru, 7,086.
Welsh Liberal Democrats, 9,549.
Democratiaid Rhyddfrydol Cymru, 9,549.
Bainham Beverley Jane, 586.
Bainham Beverley Jane, 586.
Hale Joe, 225.
Hale Joe, 225.
Richards Dye, 316.
Richards Dye, 316.
And the total number of valid votes cast across Brycheiniog Tawynedd was 81,096.
Cyfanswm nifer y pleidleisiau a fwriwyd ar draws Brycheiniog Tawynedd oedd 81,096.
The total number of ballot papers rejected was 189.
Cyfanswm nifer y papurau pleidleisio a wrthodwyd oedd 189.
Therefore, I declare that the following individual candidates and party list candidates have been allocated a seat in the Senedd for the Brycheiniog Tawynedd constituency.
Felly, rwy'n datgan bod sedd yn y Senedd ar gyfer etholaeth Brycheiniog Tawynedd wedi ei ddirannu i'r ymgeiswyr unigol a'r ymgeiswyr rhestr plaid canlynol.
Seat 1, Reform UK Wales, James Oswald David Evans.
Sedd 1, Reform UK Cymru, James Oswald David Evans.
Seat 2, Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, Sioned Anne Williams.
Sedd 2, Plaid Cymru, Sioned Anne Williams.
Seat 3, Reform UK Wales, Ian Charles McIntosh.
Sedd 3, Reform UK Cymru, Ian Charles McIntosh.
Seat 4, Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, Rebecca Phillips.
Sedd 4, Plaid Cymru, Rebecca Phillips.
Seat 5, Welsh Liberal Democrats, Jane Dodds.
Sedd 5, Democratiaid Rhyddfrydol Cymru, Jane Dodds.
Seat 6, Reform UK Wales, David Terence Mills.
Sedd 6, Reform UK Cymru, David Terence Mills.
And I hereby declare that the said candidates are duly elected as members of the Senedd for Brycheiniog Tawynedd.
OK, Brycheiniog Tawynedd. Reform 3, Plaid Cymru 2. And so far, the solitary Liberal Democrat has been returned to Jane Dodds, the leader of the party in Wales. Felicity, you've had you can read us a statement from the Prime Minister.
That's right. So we're told that Keir Starmer has spoken to Eluned Morgan, who has just within the last few minutes given a speech resigning as Welsh Labour leader, saying that she accepted responsibility for what has been an absolutely terrible, terrible day for the party. Keir Starmer then released a statement which says the following: Eluned Morgan has been a formidable First Minister and tireless champion for Wales. She broke barriers and has never stopped fighting for families in the communities she loves. Together, we have worked to lift children out of poverty, cut hospital waiting lists and create thousands of new jobs. I want to thank Eluned Morgan for the over 30 years of service she's already given to our country and our party. I have no doubt her contribution to Wales will endure. So, you know, short statement there from Keir Starmer.
Okay.
They've spoken on the phone, but, you know, obviously this terrible set of results doesn't just reflect on the Welsh Labour leader, Eluned Morgan, arguably reflects on the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer too.
Indeed. Let's bring in Simon Hart. Got interrupted earlier. What do you make about the Conservative performance?
If I was absolutely honest, I'm not going to try and make more of it than there is, but it is slightly better than a lot of people were anticipating. And if you looked at the opinion polls the other day, we just saw Darren Miller get, at one stage, he was the only one going to be the last man standing. And yet we've done a bit better than that, but it's a long, long way to go. And I think people who've been out campaigning have been telling me, look, you know, that it's going to be quite a while yet before the public give us another sort of legitimate hearing and a second chance, third chance, whatever you might want to call it. And so whilst it wasn't too much antipathy, people were quite friendly. They quite like Kemi. In fact, they like Kemi a lot. Just thought, no, it's a bit too soon yet, so we're not going to go there. So I'm an eternal optimist, as you can tell. This is, you know, could be better, could be a lot worse. The big story for me does appear. I mean, Pembroke Dock and my old constituency, Labour came fourth. I mean, when I first started doing this in 05, 6, 7, that kind of thing, it was barely worth going to Pembroke Dock because it was just like closed off to people like me. Now we came third and we still beat Labour. You know, so these are massive changes. But with the next government here in Cardiff being based on about 35% of the vote on a 50% turnout, whoever's going to do it is going to start from a position, as Keir Starmer would tell you, of having a lot of enemies. There's not going to be an easy job. For all these promises people have been making,
Well,
let's see how easy it is to deliver.
You know all about that, former chief whip with the Conservative Party or working in the whip's office. So, look, what do the Conservatives do then? Steady as she goes, wait for this Reform UK support to dwindle? There's no sign of that, is there?
Where Kemi Badenoch has been sensible is to avoid the temptation of trying to outmaneuver Reform to the right or outmaneuver the Greens to the left, or trying to look at these ever-moving targets and try to overtake them. That's a nonsense way. I think the niche in the market, the bit which ultimately decides elections and sound government, is who can be trusted to deal with the economy and to address the cost of living, to benefit individual, the challenges of individual families. That's always been an area where the Conservatives have been good. It got badly damaged under the premiership of Liz Truss, as we know. It'll take a long time before those wounds are healed. And if Kemi continues on her current trajectory, which is right, we are the party of sound money, good financial management, you get what you pay for, then that is the best way. If she tries to, say, get to the right of Farage or to the left of the Greens, or whatever it might be, that is just going to be a fool's errand.
Vaughan, we are marching through the results now. Plaid are on 37 seats. What do you think of their performance and how they ran the campaign?
Well, I think it's extraordinary. It was a small target Ming Va's campaign because they were polling very well ever since the Caerphilly by-election. So it was about avoiding mistakes, and there were a couple of slips, but nothing really that derailed the campaign. What I find interesting is that they have obviously cast the net wide in terms of selecting candidates, because I honestly believe that at one time I knew every single member of Plaid Cymru, because it wasn't that big, and they seem to have reached out to find people from different backgrounds, from different communities, maybe even people who didn't have a long track record of party membership. And there's some really interesting people coming in, not just from Plaid Cymru incidentally, but also from Reform, that will, I think, give us a Senedd that has more texture to it. That it's not full of people who are former councillors or former SPADs or whatever. There are some good, interesting people in it. But, what strikes me is, if you're a Welsh speaker, the nickname for Plaid Cymru has always been a Blaid Fach, the little party. And it was called that for decades. And this, they did very well back in 1999 when they got 28.5% of the vote, I think it was. But this is just extraordinary. But it's, to me, the big story is not just Plaid Cymru's success, it's the Labour collapse. When you look at those valleys constituencies, the Rhondda, Blaenau Gwent, these places that were totemic for the Labour Party. And it's a psychological as well as a political crisis for Labour, because Labour and Wales, in their minds at least, have been synonymous. Labour values were Welsh values. Labour was Wales. And I think coming to terms with being a small group in a big Senedd, with left-wing outnumbered hugely by Plaid Cymru on the left, facing Reform across the chamber and the Conservatives. And the Conservatives group, I think, is interesting because I suspect Reform won't want to engage at all with Plaid Cymru or with the Plaid-led government because they're looking to the next general election. I think with the Conservatives, there are things in the Plaid Cymru programme that I think the Conservatives quite like re-establishing a new form of development agency. Well, the WDA was one of Margaret Thatcher's great success stories. So, I think there could be some quite interesting cross-chamber working on some of those issues.
And there's quite a lot at stake now for Plaid Cymru, isn't there? This
huge.
is their first shot at government, and realistically, a lot of the people who voted for them did so to try to block Reform rather than as a particular gesture of support for Plaid. So although they will have what looks like a substantial mandate, albeit not a majority of seats, that has to be in their minds as they go forward.
Sure,
right?
but there's one, what they I'm certain will do is to try and put the Westminster government, the UK government, into a catch-22 position. That they won't go up there asking for an independence referendum or anything like that. What they'll ask for is the things that were in the last Welsh Labour manifesto. devolution of the Crown Estate, devolution of policing, HS2 consequentials, all of these issues which we know from focus groups played with the Welsh electorate. So they go to Keir Starmer or whoever's there and they say, give us what was in your manifesto. And then what do the UK government do? Do you give something to a Plaid Cymru government that you refuse to give to a Welsh Labour government? Well, that's a stark choice. Or do you keep saying no and let Plaid Cymru skate forward on the politics of grievance and say, look, Labour only ever wanted the seats in Wales. They never do anything for Wales. Even though they promised all this stuff, they've not done it.
Yeah.
You know, so... Yeah. It's a very difficult situation for the UK government to handle.
Yeah, I love that scenario of a catch-22 situation, isn't it? Look, for anyone watching in Swansea and Gower, we want to bring them a result. For the Gŵyl Abertawe, result has been declared. Plaid Cymru 25,000, Reform UK 21,000, Labour 11,000. Conservative 7,000, and we shall see what all that means for the candidates elected. There we go, 3 Plaid, 2 Reform, 1 Labour. Mike Hedges, veteran Labour Senedd member, he's back. Francesca O'Brien from Reform, we were speaking to her earlier. And the 3 from Plaid Cymru. So we really are kind of going through them. Simon, what do you think about that? That's sort of what Vaughan was talking about there, this relationship now between a Welsh government, I almost said a Labour Welsh government and a Labour UK government. It changes now, doesn't it? If we expect a Plaid Cymru-led or a Plaid Cymru government in Cardiff and Labour in Westminster.
I think the route ahead is sort of littered with quite difficult traps along those lines, and one of the reasons is, and one of the reasons I think there's such impatience and frustration with politics generally is that. And we've all sort of been guilty of it, which is making promises that we really can't keep. And we know we're going to stop the boats, whatever it might be. Difficult things, eye-catching things, they sound good, but when it comes to delivery, a little bit more complicated. And I think if you're Plaid Cymru governing in minority, a lot of the promises you made are going to be really hard for the reasons that Vaughan made out. Now, to some extent, yes, you can blame UK government. The Labour government in Cardiff used to blame us all the time if things didn't go right. I actually think public patience in that has worn a bit thin. I don't think the public's interest in excuses anymore. I don't think it wants to have yet another form of government which says, oh, you know what we said before the election? We can't do it now because of those people in Westminster. That might have washed one day. I don't think it'll wash now. So I think they've got to be really careful about just simply pointing an accusing finger in the direction of Keir Starmer and hoping everybody believes it's sympathetic. I think we're past that stage. And the reason, you know, Starmer has got into such difficulty in such a short space of time is because the patience span of the voter, quite reasonably, is you promised us results, we've given you a chance, you failed to deliver those results. There's plenty of other choices on the menu. I'm going to go for one of those. And Plaid have got to be careful that they don't just, your expression, Paul, the party of grievance. If they become the government of grievance, I think people will go off it quite quickly.
I don't disagree with that, Simon. I'm just saying that I don't expect them to do big nationalistic asks. I think the asks would be things that Labour promised, because that will highlight that partnership in power that Eluned Morgan ran on really didn't work. Because, you know, what I find fascinating is we have local elections a year from now, and local democracy in Wales is incredibly weak in terms of, if you look at England and Scotland, all the big parties will try and stand in every single ward. You come here to Wales, we have people elected unopposed, maybe 2 parties contesting. I think there's going to be a big push from all these parties to revitalise Welsh local democracy by fielding lots of candidates in seats. And that's a genuinely good thing for democracy, because the reason Labour's hung on for power for so long, is because of that local government base. You know, even if you go back to, when was it, 2008, 2009, when Labour lost control of all but 2 local authorities in Wales, RCT and Neath Port Talbot, they still had 3 times the number of councillors of any other party. So, you know, if people want to sort of make this Labour collapse permanent, the first stage of that is going to be the next year's local elections in Wales.
By the way, this afternoon, they won't be blaming Eluned Morgan. They would be blaming Keir Starmer. That base, that infrastructure, which has delivered so many results for them over the years, is fractured this afternoon. And they will all be pointing the finger at one.
Right, I think you two want to come in, don't you?
Just give an updated forecast.
Sure.
Professor Sir John Curtis has been doing results forecasts. We spoke to him a little bit earlier on. We've had some more results in since then, so he's updated the forecast. He's now projecting that the share of seats will be Plaid Cymru between 42 and 43 seats, Reform 34 to 35, Labour 8 to 9, so single figures there. The Conservatives 7 to 8, Greens 2, and it actually projects Lib Dem 0. Well, we know that's not right because the Lib Dems have already got one, but you get the gist.
Exceeded that expectation. I wanted to ask Simon about the future of the Welsh Conservatives, because there's still a possibility that the Welsh Conservatives could be the third biggest group in the Senate. Probably unlikely now, but it could be. Now, you've hung on well here, haven't you, given the projections were that the Welsh Conservatives could be wiped out, or you could have been left with 1 or 2 MSs. But what next? Because, in a sense, you've lost some of the membership that would naturally have gone to a harder right position in Reform. Is there space to go back to a Welsh Conservative Party that is centrist or centre-right, that could work with Plaid in the way that
I think one of the great examples of recovery was Lib Dems, who came into coalition with the Conservatives in Westminster in 2010, went out in 2015, got annihilated in the polls. They were down to 5 or 6, or maybe 9 members, down from quite a high base. And I remember going into the chamber of the House of Commons just after that election and looking across at the Lib Dem benches thinking, well, that's one problem we don't have to have again. You know, they're done. And yet now they're doing actually incredibly well at a national level, and in certain parts at any rate quite well at a local level as well. And so it's a case of sticking to your principles, not getting spooked, but not getting sort of haunted by what's going on social media. It's actually right. These are our values. This is what makes us different from the other party. This is what appeals to most voting Britons in terms of economic competence, in our case, or whatever it might be, and not getting buffeted by events. Then I think there's a route back. And I think, as I say, I think Kemi Badenoch has done quite well. There's so much pressure to just, follow the other parties.
But you have to have a brand, don't you, for the Welsh Conservatives? Regardless of what Kemi Badenoch is doing at UK level, there's got to be something that makes people support
I think that,
you.
Well, for me, at any rate, the big difference is that the Conservatives have avoided just populist stuff, just saying whatever, some poll says we should say, and have stuck rigidly to the principle that actually what really matters to most businesses, families, charities, public sector, private sector organisations is sound, competent economic management. I genuinely don't believe people want weird stuff and fancy sort of ideas. They just want somebody competent who is going to make sure that actually if you want to build a business, you can. If you want to raise a family, you can. If you want to run a charity, you can. And the government gets out of the way of everything else, just gets out of the way. And I think we have been good at that in the past. I think our reputation for it got badly damaged, as we know, in the last few years. But I think it's showing signs, particularly amongst some of the Welsh members who've been re-elected today, of being very capable, right? Experienced, competent people. And I think, call me an optimist, but I think actually that will matter more and more as we go forward. And if the populist parties who promise the earth fail to deliver, then I think the population may well think, do you know what, maybe we do need a steady bank manager.
Who on earth could you be talking about there, the populist parties? Right, you mentioned the Liberal Democrats. Let's hear a victory speech, shall we? It's Jane Dodds.
Well, na cadw on fyr, I'll keep it short because you must be really tired, those of you who've been here all day. But I do just want to say thank you once again to the officers and the clerks and the people who've been counting, to everybody here, to my fellow candidates, to everybody in the political parties and to everybody in the Welsh Liberal Democrats. It's a great honour to be back in the Senedd and to keep that Liberal Democrat flame alive. And I would say to all of my fellow candidates, I hope they will represent Brycheiniog Tawynedd with compassion, with kindness, with no hatred and no division and no blaming others, because that is what Brycheiniog Tawynedd is. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi.
OK, and a bit of history, actually, today, which was the first member of the Green Party to the Senate, and we can hear from Anthony Slaughter now.
I'd just like to start with thanking the counting staff, the venue staff, the security, that have made this day run so smoothly. So, massive thank you to you. And then I have to have, this is a historic breakthrough for Wales Green Party. I have to thank our incredible staff team across Wales who've worked so hard for this moment. And an even bigger thanks to the Cardiff campaign team. They have been at this for 2 years. It's been an inspiration. This is down to you. Diolch o galon. We have made historic breakthrough. First Green voice in the Senate changes everything. Politics in Wales has changed today, and I'm proud that Wales Green Party are part of that change. But this is only the beginning for us. The momentum will continue. This is just the beginning. Hope is here.
OK, we are nearly filling in the map of Wales now. The last but one count left. It's Flint Wrexham.
Oedd 70,167, and the total number of votes cast across Flint Wrexham was 70,167. Cyfanswm nifer y papurau pleidleisio a wrthodwyd oedd 171. The total number of ballot papers rejected was 171. Felly, rwy'n datgan bod sedd yn y Senedd ar gyfer etholaeth Flint Wrexham wedi ei ddirannu I ymgeiswyr unigol a'r ymgeiswyr rhestr plaid canlynol. Therefore, I declare that the following individual candidates and party list candidates have been allocated a seat in the Senedd for the Flint Wrexham constituency. Reform UK, Christiana Emsley. Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, Carrie Harper. Reform UK, Nigel Williams. Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, Mark Jones. Ceidwadwyr Cymreig, Welsh Conservatives, Sam Rowlands. Welsh Labour, Plaid Lafur, Ken Skates.
OK, two Reform, two Plaid, one Conservative, and Ken Skates. Laura, just does he sneaks in there, doesn't he? Yes.
It's a pattern, though, isn't it? Welsh Labour capturing that last 6th seat, which is humiliating, isn't it, in the big scheme of it, because it reflects the tiny proportion of votes they're getting overall.
Shall we give a little tally of where we are? So, in terms of seats at the Senedd, Plaid Cymru currently are on 39 seats, Reform UK 32, Labour 9, Conservative 7, Green 2 and 1 Liberal Democrat. And we have 1 seat left, I believe, Gwynedd Maldwyn.
So it depends if Plaid gets 3 or could even get 4, I guess, in Gwynedd Maldwyn.
They're probably still collecting the boxes. Actually,
It's vast, isn't it?
So
the
huge.
size of, what was it, 2 Luxembourgs? Or the state of Delaware?
Yes,
Take your pick.
That's right. And you've talked about, you know, it's a bit of a kind of, it's just the magic numbers in all of this, getting past 40. I mean, I know it's just a number, but there's something quite symbolic about it, isn't it, for them if they get past it?
Yes, and I think most people would agree that, you know, a minority government becomes more credible once you get over that 40 mark, when 49 is a majority. Doesn't necessarily make it that much easier, because there's still, you know, relationships that have to be managed with Labour, the Greens, the Lib Dem, and maybe even the Conservatives, if we take forward what we were discussing a moment ago.
And what does, Vaughan, someone watching this, not necessarily into Welsh politics, what does a Plaid Cymru government look and feel like for the average punter out there?
Do you know, Nick, that's a really good question, because I think it may feel different when actually it's not very different from Welsh Labour government. You know, the thing that people have always thrown at Plaid Cymru is, oh, it's Welsh-speaking Labour. And if you look at the polling, and this has been true for decades, if you ask people not who do you intend to vote for, but which parties do you like, Plaid Cymru has always been liked by a lot of Welsh voters who never vote for it. But because of this Labour collapse, those people who've always thought, oh, you know, I like Adam Price, or I like David Wigley, or I like David Ellis-Thomas, or whatever, they have coalesced around Plaid. Now, the question is that a permanent shift or a semi-permanent shift, or is it a one-off? But, I mean, the important thing is this, that, you know, Labour could well win elections in Wales again. They could regroup, you know, so I'm just talking about the Liberal Democrats. But that balloon of their invincibility has been popped. Labour can lose in Wales. I mean, that's what this election means. And that will make our politics much more competitive, I think, you know.
And it's hard to come back, though, Vaughan, isn't it? I mean, the Scottish Labour have found that, you know, once you're out of office, if you have a credible government where there's a grievance issue in the case of Scotland around independence, it's incredibly hard for the party that's been out of office for a long while to find a way back. And as we saw in Scotland, you know, Anna Sawar was on course to be a real contender for First Minister this time, but then everything was pulled away with the election of a UK Labour government.
But also there are smaller things. You know, some of those Conservative victories I think we've seen, like Paul Davis, for instance, Darren Miller and so on, are because they're very good local representatives, you know, and you can buck a trend if you're a good local representative. Now, I suspect, I don't know, but if Plaid are sensible, what they'll be doing is using the resources that all these new MSs will give them to establish a network of offices, stroke advice centres across the country, you know, to embed themselves into their community.
Don't you think that'll be a lot harder under this system, though? I mean, some of these... I mean, we were joking about the size of Delaware, but some of these constituencies
not if you've got 2 or 3 MSs, because you can open 2 or 3 offices. And I was looking at the Plaid lists, and they did, and the other parties didn't do this. I don't quite understand why. They picked geographically located MSs. So in Gwynedd Maldwyn, you know, you've got a candidate from the west, a candidate from the middle, and a candidate from the east. And, you know, that enables you, I think, to or at least have the potential to build up a network with
that is interesting, because a lot of people will be wondering, right, who's going to be my local, you know, my local representative.
I don't think we should underestimate that as well. But and if you're just waiting for your hip operation, who do you write to? Who do you get? Do you have to write a letter which is copied 5 times? And do all of the MSs then write to the local health board, or does one of them write? Do you have to get consent forms by law? Do they all have to get a consent form to be able to deal with your case? I think it's all... I've always thought that Mark Draper was sort of fiddling with some sort of idea he had, and it's all a bit of a sort of academic exercise. But I think the practical implications of this on the ground are actually quite serious. And what's worse about them, they might suit a politician, might even suit a journalist, but they don't suit the voters. These make life more complicated and more expensive.
We're saying that Plaid Cymru's manifesto suggested a review of the electoral system.
And you chaired a commission, didn't you, Laura, that sort of said, this is the last sort of system you want, basically.
Get past stage 1 of our evaluation.
Just a final word. Did say it may not last then?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, nobody wants to change an electoral system again, but you can tweak the system to make it. You can tweak it while still making it work.
Apparently, we can now officially say that Plaid Cymru is the largest party.
Right, there we go. Simon Hart, Vaughan Roderick, thank you very much indeed. Great contributions. And we are going to speak to Jane Dodds now, who's down the line from Builth Wells, who has been returned to the Senedd. Jane, congratulations. I interviewed you a number of times on the campaign. You talked about how you were fed up being Billy No Mates. I'm afraid, dare I say, you're still Billy No Mates.
Well, look, we haven't had all the results, or at least I don't know all the results, and I'm just listening to your programme and just hearing some of the results at the moment. So, look, I'm really pleased to have been re-elected up here in Brycheiniog Tawynedd. We've done really well across Wales. We've increased our vote share, and that's going to be something that we can really build on. So, look, here I'm really pleased. We've got the Welsh Liberal Democrats representation continuing in the Senedd, and we've been there for 27 years, and we're going to be continuing.
How is it? Were you genuinely worried whether you'd get elected there or not? I mean, you know, what's been the picture like?
Well, it's, you know, the new system, I'm not sure, has actually tried, which the aim was to help smaller parties and to really make it proportional. The other thing is that in talking to voters, it's been really hard for them and confusing for them to understand exactly how it's worked. For example, people actually thought they would be able to put in more than one vote. So there's a lot to go in terms of actually trying to explain a new system, and I would agree with your previous panellist from what I heard. We don't want to change it again, but we need to make sure that we're raising the awareness and getting more information out there to the public.
Look, you're going to be a familiar face back in the Senate. There's going to be an awful lot of new faces there, and clearly an entirely different look to it all. Plaid Cymru on 39 seats. Reform on 32. If they need your support on something, are you still refusing to budge if they spend a penny on independence?
Well, look, I'm really clear. I would not in any way, shape or form support a Reform UK First Minister. I'm just hearing from you what the results are, and let's see what the next 24 hours is going to be. So it's really early days, early hours to be honest, and yeah, let's see what the discussions are over the next couple of days.
Jane, it's Felicity here. Congratulations on your re-election. Just wondering, you know, you're in one of these vast constituencies now, aren't you? I mean, it was big enough before your constituency. Now it's even bigger. What are the logistical challenges, do you think, for an MS now in this new system? How do you sort of make sure that you're hitting all the geographical areas where people want to see you?
Well, don't forget, I was a regional representative, and I represented the largest region in Wales, that was Mid and West Wales, that went from Llanelli up to Wilfa and from Pembrokeshire over to the border with England. So I'm well used to representing a very large area and to making sure that we have the voices of both rural communities and those urban communities. And Brycheiniog Tawe Nedd is going to be one of those. So I'm looking forward to continuing my work with the constituency that I've worked with previously, and also to make sure that we work hard on behalf of those communities that I haven't been working on behalf of before.
So are you thinking, what, like surgeries in different places at different times? I mean, is that how it works logistically?
Do you know, I don't think we've worked out how it's going to work.
Fair enough. It's early days. It's early days. Fair enough.
Felicity, do you mind? I mean, come on, that's an impossible question.
I just think it's a big ask.
Yeah, it is. No, I agree. And look, I think people watching this will want to know who their local representative is, how do they get in touch with them. This is all bread and butter stuff. I hope we're helping people or just raising the issue. Jane Dodds, congratulations again. Thanks very much indeed. Right, let's have a break from the studio and go back to the Senedd and join Teleri.
Thanks, Nick. Yes, I'm joined now by Sam Blaxland, historian of the Conservative Party, in this gorgeous day in Cardiff Bay, isn't it? Isn't the weather amazing? We've got people sunbathing, out sitting in the sunshine.
I can't wait to join them.
One bit of colour I will give you is I've just seen David Tristan, who's been elected in Caerdydd Ffynnon Taf for Plaid Cymru, arriving on his bike, carrying it up the stairs himself and trying to tie it up outside of the Senedd before going in to take his oath. So we will hopefully try and catch up with him later. But that means that we think that he's the first politician to arrive here to take his oath at the Senedd. So, Sam, we can now say, I think, that Plaid Cymru are the largest party. What do you make of this? You know, will your next book be the history of the Conservative Party, or do you have to call it the right now? Because, you know, it seems to have collapsed to a certain extent.
I think someone needs to write a history of the right in Wales since devolution, because it's not just the Conservatives, it's been the Brexit Party, it's been these little splinter groups, Abolish the Assembly, and of course the Conservatives. So I might do that one day, but I've got other irons in the fire at the moment. But I was actually quite struck by it. I'm not just saying this because it's what I've written on. The Tory vote has held up a little bit better than I expected it to, actually, and in some of those areas where Reform perhaps haven't done quite as well as they were expecting, the Conservative vote is reasonable. So
and what's behind that, do you think? Is it personalities? You know, is it the charismatic or, you know, active politicians in their local area that's held up that vote, or is it something else?
I suspect in somewhere like Penybont with Andrew R.T. Davis, that it probably is something to do with local personalities. But I think there probably is a smallish group of the electorate who consider themselves small c conservative, look at the other right-wing option, Reform, and think, well, actually, they're a bunch of radicals. They're actual firebrands. Some might even say they're kind of spivs with no real experience. That's certainly not true for all of them. But I think there's, in some ways, lots of things that are not very conservative about Reform at all. So I think that's why the Tory votes held up, in terms of percentages, last thing I saw anyway, similarly to Labour, actually, which I can't believe, I can't believe we're saying that.
Our projections are that they could be, you know, on the same range of seats between 7 and 8 or 8 and 9.
I mean, that's just extraordinary.
They could both be on the same number.
As a historian of Wales, we could trot out all the cliches about this being historical, but it is. This is a moment to go from a position of not quite hegemony, but of dominance for so long, to falling away like this. You know, Wales and bits of Wales have been kind of totemic for the Labour Party historically. The biggest majorities in the whole of the UK were seats like Llanelli in the 1950s, for example. People will remember that. And yeah, this is, and even when the supposed Red Wall fell in the 2019 general election, Wales kind of stayed strong. So the fact that quite a few of these Valleys constituencies either have one Labour member just clinging on or none at all is really quite something.
Is there anything in history that compares to this in one election day, this kind of collapse?
I've been racking my brains. I mean, you could talk about the decline or the rise, I suppose, of the SNP in Scotland. You could think about the decline of the Liberal Party in the early 20th century, but I don't think on one occasion to have this level of drama over the course of a day is that. I'm not sure there are parallels, but I think my view is that whilst it looks like Labour has just slumped, the foundations there have been cracking, have been rotting for quite some time. Labour's has had in Wales and the UK a difficult task for a long time. They're trying to be both metropolitan Liberal parties whilst also representing the kind of left behind, the deindustrialised working class, and that was always going to give, I think. And in Wales, it's given because a lot of those votes have happily gone to Plaid Cymru. Some of them maybe not so happily, but they've done it, and others have reluctantly or not gone to Reform, and that actually is quite logical.
And you know, it was interesting to me what Anna McMorrin was saying to me earlier, that actually, you know, the party needs to move more towards the working class. I mean, I'm reading, you know, applying your logic to that, therefore to align more with blue-collar workers with a deindustrialised base. But, you know, can they do both successfully? Is Labour in the UK kind of aligning themselves more with that metropolitan London Labour
Oh, they're
voice?
absolutely doing that, yeah.
They've done that, whereas in Wales they're doing something different?
Oh, they've absolutely
Or they should do something different because the electorate's different?
Well, exactly. Well, the electorate is very different. And what do we mean by working class now? It used to make sense. It used to be easy. We were talking, I mentioned that Llanelli example a moment ago. That was because James Griffiths, the MP, back in the day was an ex-coal miner and loads of his constituents were coal miners or something similar. That just doesn't apply now. The new working class is very, very different. So they've got a job on their hands.
Success?
Reform success, I think, boils down to the fact that no one quite knows exactly what they are, but they're a vessel for a protest vote at the moment.
Sam Blaxland, that's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. I'm glad we were able to catch up with you from the sunshine in Cardiff Bay. Nick, back to you.
What a wonderful shot. We keep on saying it, don't we? I'm delighted to say that David Wigley, former leader of Plaid Cymru, is with us in the studio. Good evening. Congratulations, I should say.
Very good evening. Thank you very much indeed.
I mean, it must be quite an emotional day for you.
It is. It'll dawn on me sometime in the middle of the night what a momentous result this has been. We thought it was possible, but it was going to be a battle. I just want to take a moment to thank everybody who's worked so hard over weeks and months towards this. The candidates, the voluntary sector within the party, knocking on doors, walking the streets, this sort of thing. It's been a tremendous effort. And now the responsibility starts. Rhun has led a great campaign. He has projected the issues. Now it's a question of in government that we can do something about them. Get the economy right first of all, so that we've got the resources then to help with the health and the education and the housing and all the other issues that face us. But it's a challenge, but I hope we're up to it.
And just very briefly, but we have a little recap at 6 o'clock. This is better than you could possibly have imagined, isn't it?
Oh, I don't think anybody could have imagined this result at the start. We projected the question that it was Plaid or reform, and we hoped that this would come home. It has come home, and this is the result.
I will get more thoughts from you in a second. Right, for those of you who are just joining us, welcome to our election special on an extraordinary day in Welsh politics. The First Minister, Eluned Morgan, has lost her seat, and all but one count has been declared, with Plaid Cymru at 39 seats, Reform UK at 32 seats. Labour have plummeted to 9, with the Conservatives just 2 seats behind that. History too, with the Green Party picking up their first 2 Senate seats, whilst the Liberal Democrats have retained 1. Stay with us, we're still waiting for that final result from Gwynedd Maldwyn. If you're looking for the 6 o'clock news, it's on BBC Two Wales, followed by Wales Today with Lucy Owen in the studio and Thomas David in Cardiff Bay. All the coverage, of course, of the election is also available online. Head to the BBC Wales News app, where there's a live page with all the very latest. There we go. But if you're watching BBC One Wales, you are stuck with us.
Stuck with us, absolutely.
And by the way, well done on that first debate between the leaders.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much indeed.
They didn't all work out as successfully as yours did.
So look, what does this start? What's the mood in the pod? Just give us a sense, actually, David. Some of the conversations you've had today.
They're shattered, they're tired, they've been knocking doors, you know. It's been 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day work. I'm beyond that now. I have to restrict myself, but some people have put a tremendous effort in. And the question now is that we can justify the confidence the people of Wales have put in us. And that's a challenge.
What does the start of a Plaid Cymru government, minority government, led government look like? I mean, if you with
I don't know, because we haven't been here
before. A good point. What do you think are the things they should really start to focus on, that people out there will start to notice that there has been this historic change?
Yes, well, quite clearly, we need to get our relationship with the government at Westminster right, because we have to work together, even in areas we don't agree with. We have to show that we're relevant to every part of Wales, because every part of Wales has given us support in this election. Incredibly, look at the Monmouth result, and this is in two seats, you know, running through to the border, 2 out of 6. Incredible. And we have to start showing that we are delivering. That it isn't just yap all the time, that there are some clear wins. As I said a moment ago, I think on air, it's the economy that is the key to this. I'm quite certain, because if we don't get the economy right, we'll have the same sort of problems as Labour have had. And the tragedy of the Labour period was when we were getting so much money through from the European Union, we didn't use it effectively to build an ongoing self-regenerative situation that then feeds through to the social programmes and all the rest. So that's the...
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of expand on that thought, really, David, because we know that the cost of living has been the dominant issue in this election, really. A lot of people are really struggling, and they've had years and years of it. And by the looks of the experience of the UK Westminster government, their patience for what they perceive as non-delivery seems to be very short. So how much pressure will there be? And do you think there are some quick wins that can show people that a Plaid government can make a difference?
I have ideas that I would have that are potentially quick wins, but it's for Llŷn and his cabinet to decide the priorities, and it'd be quite wrong for me just to be shouting my ideas.
Let me just a little bit of commentary. We've got the first MS has been sworn in.
Oh yes, is that David Tristan?
David Tristan.
Oh.
One of your own there, David. He's not wasting any time.
Is he hearing us?
No, I don't think so. Just the pictures of him, I think.
Well.
Sorry,
yes,
go on.
No, I'm delighted to see David Tristan there. No, you know, and there has to be a coherent programme. There's no use having one lot going in that direction, one in that direction. I think there'll be a need to build a team attitude in the new Plaid group, because some don't know each other, never met each other, you know.
I mean, I've I've said this a few times in the run-up to the election. Everybody's been very quick to say this is going to be such an impossible job for the party that wins this election because there's no money, relationships will be tough. But that's really the situation for any new government that comes in. The advantage that Plaid has is freshness, without a doubt, because people have decided to vote for change. So therefore, there's more of a honeymoon period, I think, when you come in as a fresh party. We know probably the two reasons why people have given their support to Plaid Cymru. A lot has been made of the anti-reform vote, but it's also because Plaid's positioned itself as the party that can best defend Wales or speak up for Wales. And that gives Plaid a little bit of hope as well in terms of relationship building. But it is going to be hard, David, isn't it? I mean, there's no doubt whatsoever the finances are dreadful and they look worse in forthcoming years. So,
and therefore we have to look at everything to get the priorities right and to make sure that every pound is earning its place. You think particularly on some of the healthcare and social programmes, you know, because there are vulnerable people who are dependent on this, and we've got to get it right for them.
And that implies some cuts, right? You know, that implies you say, OK, I don't think this is working, therefore it's going, and the money that's spent on it is going over here. And that's kind of what we haven't really heard addressed by any of the parties, including Plaid, during the campaign.
I think, you know, and not just in this campaign, but over the years, and not just in Cardiff Bay, but it's true in Westminster as well, that always there's going to be something new, extra that's going to come, and you don't need to therefore pare back on things. But there are difficult decisions that will have to be taken, and they'll be taken in London as well. The question is, can we do it in a way that's sensitive to the needs of Wales and the dangers of the vulnerable people in Wales being penalised?
You know, it's interesting you're saying about the economy, with my former business correspondent hat on here. I'm not sure anyone has really given a kind of cohesive vision of the Welsh economy since Brexit, actually, you know, in terms of... we have got our final declaration. I'm going to take you to the big screen because it is Gwynedd Maldwyn, because I think it is worth it, a sense of occasion. We've rattled through nearly all of the 16 constituencies, and let's go to Caernarfon and listen in now.
Mae yna dros 100 bod yma yn cyfri, mae yna dros 700 bod yn gweithio ar etholiad dros y ddeudydd dwytha. My appreciation and thanks to all the staff who have been working today and over the last couple of days. Awn ni symud ymlaen felly at y datganiad, we'll move on to the declaration. Rwy fi, David Gibbard, swyddog canlyniadau ar gyfer etholaeth Gwynedd Maldwyn, yn datgan fod y nifer pleidleisiau a gofnodwyd ar gyfer pob plaid wleidyddol ac ymgeisydd fel y ganlyn. I, David Gibbard, returning officer for the Gwynedd Maldwyn constituency, declare that the number of votes recorded for each political party and individual candidate is as follows. Cydwadwyr Cymreig, Welsh Conservatives, 5-6-5 dim, 5-6-5-0. Gwlad Gall Cymru fod yn well, Gwlad Wales can be better, 7-6-7. Heritage Party, Plaid Tyrtadaeth, 2-4 dim, 2-4-0. Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, 3-6 dim 8-7. Plaid Werdd, Green Party, 4 dim 9 dim, 4090. Reform UK, 2-2-6-6-7, 22667. Welsh Labour, Llafur Cymru, 4-4-6-6, 4-4-6-6. Welsh Liberal Democrats, Democratiaid Rhyddfrydol Cymru, 4-5-5-4, 4-5-5-4. Russell George, 2-8-6-2, 2-8-6-2. Monty Kennard, Annibynnol Independents, 3-7, 3-0-7. Cyfanswm nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a ddwrhyd oedd the total number of valid cast votes were 81690 dim 81690. Cyfanswm nifer y pleidleisiau a wrthodwyd oedd the total number of ballot papers rejected was 199199. Felly, rwy'n datgan fod sedd yn y Senedd ar gyfer etholaeth Gwynedd Maldwyn wedi ei dyrannu i'r ymgeiswyr rhestr plaid canlynol. Therefore, I declare that the following party list candidates have been allocated the seat in the Senedd for the Gwynedd Maldwyn constituency. Sedd 1, seat 1, Plaid Cymru, Party of Wales, Sian Gwenllian. Sedd 2, seat 2, Reform UK, Andrew Charles Griffin. Sedd 3, seat 3, Plaid Cymru, Party of Wales, Mabon ap Gwynfor. Sedd 4, Plaid Cymru, Party of Wales, Becca Brown. Sedd 5, Reform UK, Claire Victoria Johnson-Wood. Sedd 6, seat 6, Plaid Cymru, Party of Wales, Elwyn Vaughan.
OK, there we go. So the results, Gwynedd Maldwyn, 4 from Plaid Cymru, 2 from Reform, which putting the final tally at 43 seats. David Wigley, sort of appropriately, Mabon ap Gwynfor, Gwynfor Evans' grandson.
Yes, indeed.
Elected there.
He is.
Because, of course, Gwynfor Evans, the party's first MP of Westminster, it feels it's in that historic kind of era for your party, isn't it?
It is a historic day. It's historic for Plaid Cymru, of course, but it's historic for Wales. So we're breaking out of the Westminster mould. We've shown that what we said throughout the campaign, that Plaid could beat Reform, and we've done so. In seats like Gwynedd now, seeing Elwyn Vaughan in the 4th position, who worked so hard, thinking that he had no chance of winning, but that he wanted to support the others, and getting in himself at the end. We've not got a majority, but we've got enough of a group there to be able to run a programme through the Senedd for the coming years, and I believe that we'll be able to create the liaisons across party boundaries on different issues in order to ensure that we have a coherent programme.
David Wigley, former leader of Plaid Cymru, congratulations. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much indeed.
OK, let's go back to the Bay and Senedd and join Teleri.
Thanks very much, Nick. Yes, the sun is still shining. Plenty of activity here now. People starting to gather to watch what's happening and enjoying the last of today's sunshine. And I've managed to nab one of the new messes. Well, not brand new to the Senedd. You're a very familiar face to us, Andrew R.T. Davies. You've been elected in Pen-y-bont, Bro Morgannwg. What do you make of this result? You've got, I noticed you're on exactly the same vote share as Labour, but with 2 fewer seats.
Well, at the end of the day, it was a new voting system that none of us knew what results were going to be turned up, other than the old parties, such as the Conservatives and the Labour Party, with their doctrine, was going to be rejected by the electorate. We knew that from the opinion polls. We have to be honest about that. But I think, in fairness to Darren Miller, who led the Conservative campaign in Wales,
it's less bad than you expected.
To come back on 7 seats when the polls, when we were going into the campaign, were predicting only 1, is something that we can, and I use the word, cling on to, because we want to be in government. And what we've got to do is take a long, hard look at ourselves in the mirror and actually work on the formula that gets us to a place where we can convince sufficient voters to put us into a position to be in government. We haven't done that, but we've had a better result today than anyone predicted.
So who is now voting for you, would you say? Who's left?
Well, at the end of the day, if I look at my own constituency of Pen-y-bont, Bro Morgannwg, there was a wide caucus of opinion there that was voting A, on my record from a former regional member perspective for the Vale of Glamorgan, but there was also a strong Conservative core vote in Bridgend that we can build on. And don't forget, in 12 months' time, we got all-out council elections in Wales. And so what's really important for us as Welsh Conservatives is that we don't spend all our time looking in the mirror and thinking about things. We actually put action into motion here, and we become a party that people vote for at those council elections so that we rebuild from local government. We historically have held the Vale of Glamorgan Council on numerous occasions, and we've had a sizable Conservative group on Bridgend Council in the past. We need to not sit on our backsides. We need to get out there, fight for every council seat and rebuild ready for the general election in 2028, 2029.
So this isn't a time for the Conservatives to go to therapy then? Because I've mentioned this a few times today, actually. I remember vividly after the general election, you coming on and saying, you know, basically the party needs to Welshify and separate itself, you know, ideologically at least, from the Conservatives in Westminster. That hasn't happened.
Well, that's why I'm sitting here as a member, not as a leader. Because at the end of the day, that's what I believe would have put us in a good, strong position for these elections.
You think this result would have been different today had that been implemented?
Well, I was offering the full Welsh breakfast. Others were offering muesli. But at the end of the day, the muesli has given us a decent group to work with. But what we've got to do is face the reality that we've now gone 6 or 7 Senedd elections, Assembly elections, without being in a position to be in government. And there's no point in playing at politics. If you want to improve people's lives, you have to be in government or around government to do that. And I want to make sure that we can do that in the next 4 years by playing my small part in doing that, first at the local government elections next year, and then at the general elections, whenever that might come in 28, 29. Kemi Badenoch has found her voice. She has a storming 6 to 8 months after conference, I would suggest. Regrettably, the results that we've had in England and Wales and Scotland have been challenging, but I think there are a lot of bright openings there for us to build on now, and we must do that, not spend all our time on the therapist couch.
What are your predictions then for this next Senedd term? What's the dynamic going to be like here? What are the kinds of stories that people like me are going to be covering? Well,
I think Rhun ap Iorwerth, at the end of the day, deserves a huge amount of congratulations for what he's done, because don't forget he wanted to go to Westminster 2.5 years ago to be the MP for Ynys Môn, and here we are 2.5 years later. He's now in pole position to be the First Minister. So congratulations to Rhun, but I do believe that he could turn into a Keir Starmer type figure with a huge number of new MSs, just like Keir Starmer did in 2024 with a huge number of MPs. They've promised a lot, but no real budget lines to indicate how they're going to deliver that, and it could quite quickly unravel. And a lot of people I was speaking to were saying that they were voting Plaid this time were tactically voting because they were left-wing voters wanting to stop reform. They had no great passion or conviction for Plaid. They were doing it from a tactical point of view. So I think unless they get their delivery right, I think in a very short space of time, that credit could turn to be a millstone around his neck, and he'd be the Keir Starmer of Welsh politics.
Andrew R.T. Davies, it's a pleasure to speak to you. We will allow you now to come and take your oath in this fantastic building behind us. Congratulations to you on your electoral success.
Thank you.
Teleri, thank you very much indeed. Teleri Glyn-Jones there with Andrew R.T. Davies. Right, let's get a bit more reaction now to the unbelievable losses suffered by Welsh Labour. Politically unthinkable, really, until you actually see it there in black and white. And we can speak to Ken Skates, former Labour Welsh Government Transport Minister and Minister for North Wales, who will be returning to the Senedd. He joins us from his Wrexham University, as you can see there in the background. Ken, good evening. A brutal day for the party. What went wrong?
Oh, good evening, Nick. It has been a truly brutal day, as you say. It's a day that we would never want to go through again. Rebuilding has to begin immediately, and we have to be prepared for 4 years of very challenging circumstances. To ask what went wrong, I think, first of all, it would be unfair to say that any one issue, any one person is to blame for this. We have to take a cold, long look with objectivity at what's happened, and from there ensure that we can reconnect with the people that we serve, the people that need better services, better opportunity.
A cold, hard look would mean really looking at what's happened in recent years, isn't it? This is a party that just lost sight of what was important to voters out there. It was a party that got caught up in infighting. It got caught up in being dominated by the narrative of a speed limit. And legitimately, people just were asking, well, what is this party doing for me?
Also, Nick, there's a really significant element to play into this, which is that the enemy of the truth is not always a lie, it's the myth. And Reform have been promoting more myths than the Brothers Grimm for several years, and convinced people not to vote for Welsh Labour or other parties on the promise that they can do things which I'm afraid they simply have not got the power to do. In terms of reflecting on where we are, we also have 27 years of incumbency. Every single election, when you're in the incumbent after this time, gets harder and harder. The mountain gets steeper and taller. So there's also the issue of incumbency and how you can renew and rebuild in government. If we're out of government, then I think that gives us an opportunity to reconnect and to repurpose the party to ensure that society is more cohesive. Right now, society feels like it's shattering before our very eyes. And it's Labour that has always been the party that has built society.
Hey, look, it's undeniably difficult. Obviously, you have to defend that record in power. You had to defend the record of Keir Starmer. Do you feel let down by the party at Westminster? Do you think Labour, your Labour colleagues, the Welsh MPs, really understood quite how difficult the situation was for you?
Oh, they most definitely understood how difficult it was. I mean, the Welsh Labour MPs turned out day in, day out to support us. We fought as one party, as one family. We've lost as one party and one family on this occasion, but we will rebuild, we will come back.
Ken, it's Felicity here. Thanks for joining us this evening, and congratulations on your re-election, although a very difficult day, obviously, for the party. Having said that, though, is this just normal politics coming to Wales? You know, it isn't remotely normal, is it, for a country to have the same party winning elections for a century? And that did have to stop at some point. And although that might be a psychological shock after such a long time, is it healthier for Wales for someone else to have a go? And is it healthier for your party to spend some time in opposition?
I think the key thing here really is that for many years we've been saying that the reason we keep winning is because the public keep trusting us to improve their lives and their opportunities. Now, clearly, when you lose, and to the degree that we've lost today, we have to be humble in defeat and say the public lost trust and faith in us to deliver as they wish. So we have to reflect on that as part of the rebuilding process. It is incredibly difficult. There are all sorts of factors, from the hyperlocal to the global, that have played into this. We are living in very, very dangerous and difficult times. And I think we need to reflect on the way that society is reshaping, as well as our purpose as a party.
OK, Ken Skates, thank you very much indeed. We'll have to leave it there. Right, I'm going to take you to Scotland next, because we haven't been there yet, and there is a lot going on right around the UK. So let's go to Stefan Messenger now and get the very latest on what's been happening up there. Steph.
Yes, hi Nick, from a sunny Edinburgh, and just like in Wales, we've had a rush of declarations of seats being announced over the last few hours. The seats are slowly filling up in that building behind me in the Scottish Parliament, and what's becoming clear is that the SNP are on course for a fifth consecutive term in power, running the Scottish Government. The BBC forecasting they'll win up to 63 seats here at Holyrood, just shy of that outright majority of 65 seats, meaning they'll have to form either a minority government or work with other parties, possibly the Greens or the Lib Dems. John Swinney, the SNP leader, the current First Minister of Scotland, declaring victory very early on, in fact, and describing this as a precious moment for him personally, achieving his own mandate as leader of the party after a few turbulent years for the SNP. If you remember, they've had 3 First Ministers in the space of 5 years. We've also seen the party's Westminster leader, Stephen Flynn, being elected to Holyrood. He's making the switch from Westminster, elected in the constituency of Aberdeen Deeside, narrowly beating the Tories there in an area where there's been a lot of debate during the campaign over the future of the oil and gas industries in the northeast of Scotland. And he described in his speech the results today as historic in terms of the SNP winning that 5th consecutive term in office. And he said, let it be known that soon Scotland will be an independent nation and we will thrive as a result, he said. It's not been plain sailing for the SNP throughout the day, though, Nick. Some of the big headlines have come in the form of the SNP losing seats to the Green Party. The Greens describing themselves as buzzing this evening because they've won their first constituency seats in the Scottish Parliament, including here, where I'm stood now, in Edinburgh Central, where they pushed the SNP's Angus Robertson, a former Cabinet Secretary in the Scottish Government, into 3rd place. And they've also won taken a seat from the SNP in Glasgow South Side, which was the former seat of the former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. The Lib Dems have also taken 2 seats from the SNP, as has Scottish Labour. But of course, Scottish Labour had ambitions to displace the SNP after their success at the general election 2 years ago. I mean, we spoke during the results programme then, Nick, about it seeming then as if the SNP's bubble had burst as they lost seat after seat to Scottish Labour then, and all the talk was of Scottish Labour, you know, measuring the curtains and the carpets in Bute House, the Scottish FM's residence here in Edinburgh, thinking that they could repeat that performance now at the parliamentary elections 2 years down the line, but that hasn't happened. And Anas Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, arriving at his Glasgow count earlier on and making a concession speech to the cameras, describing that the party was hurting, and he said he tried to make this campaign about Scotland, but that there was a national wave of disappointment with Labour at Westminster that they failed to overcome, and he stood by his previous comments that Keir Starmer should resign. We're still awaiting, Nick, the results of the regional list seats here in Scotland, and that's where we'll get a sense of how well Reform UK is likely to do. They're yet to elect a parliamentarian to the Scottish Parliament, so it'll be interesting to see how big a disruptor they're likely to be during this next session of the Parliament. They're very much talking up their chances of becoming the main opposition party, vying with Labour for that 2nd place spot. The Conservatives, the Scottish Conservatives, have already conceded they will no longer be the main opposition party next time around. So just looking at the latest tallies, Nick, 69 out of 129 seats declared so far here in Scotland, and obviously we'll keep an eye as the rest of the results roll in.
Steph, thank you very much indeed. Steph Messenger there. SNP back in control in Edinburgh. Wayne David, former Labour MP for Caerphilly, is with me. Good evening, Wayne. Thanks for your time. So we are set to have a nationalist leader in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Quite something, isn't it?
It is quite something,
and a
yes.
huge challenge for the unionist parties.
Yes, it is quite something, that's right. And I say that's something we'll have to respond to. I mean, personally, someone who believes in devolution but wants to maintain the unity of the United Kingdom, I think that is something to be worried about. And I think that's something we have to think about very, very carefully in the new political circumstances in which we find ourselves.
And of course, we've been talking so much about Caerphilly because actually what happened in Caerphilly in that by-election, an area you know intimately, what's happened to the Labour vote in that town?
Well, I've got to say, I mean, one of the key things about that by-election was with an unpopular Labour Party, both at a UK level and a Welsh level, opposition to reform tended to gravitate towards Plaid. And what happened under the first past the post system was enormously successful. Plaid won the by-election, hands down. But the same thing has happened now under a proportional representation system. And I was struck by the number of people I spoke to. And they said, well, we've always supported Labour, but we were inclined to vote Plaid Cymru.
And they said, do you believe in Welsh independence? Oh, no, we stood against Welsh independence. We don't want to see that happening, but we want to see reform being beaten. It worked in a by-election. It can work again. And I say that point was made by David Wigley. And it has worked again. Reform have been beaten, but we're in a different situation as a consequence.
We look at Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Has that vision of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party of having devolved governments, but within the UK, has that failed?
It hasn't been given sufficient weight. And I think from the experience of the last 24 hours, we've got to learn lessons at a Welsh level, but also the Labour Party at a national level, UK level, has to learn lessons as well. And one of the things that happened soon after Keir Starmer became Prime Minister was that Sue Gray, who was pushing the devolution...
Let me interrupt because Rhys ap Iorwerth is about to make what looking very much like a victory speech.
Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi gyd. Gyfeillion, wrth i ganlyniadau ddod i law ledled Cymru dros yr oriau diwetha, mi ddath hi'n amlwg pa ddewis sydd wedi cael ei wneud ar gyfer dyfodol ein cenedl. Dwi am ddiolch i bawb sydd wedi cymryd rhan yn yr etholiad heddiw, ac ar sail y bleidlais honno, mae Plaid Cymru rwan yn barod i fwrw ymlaen i ffurfio Llywodraeth nesa Cymru. The people of Wales have today decided on the next steps in Wales's journey. I'm grateful to everyone that took part in this election, and yes, different voices are represented in that overall result. But based on that vote, Plaid Cymru now stands ready to take the necessary steps to form the next Government of Wales. This is a moment 100 years in the making, a moment in which we hold the promise and ambition of a nation in our hands. The promise of fairness, of opportunity, of prosperity, of a nation determined in its ambition and uncompromising in its compassion. This victory comes not only because of those campaigners whose hard work and passion propelled us forward in recent weeks and months, but to those who went before us, whose patience and persistence never waned even when the disappointments hurt. But of course, we have won not for ourselves as individuals or as a party, but for the people of Wales, in order that we can serve the people of Wales. And of course, that means all of the people, regardless of how they voted in this election. We have won because we represent hope over division, credibility over chaos, and progress over stagnation. Mae pobl Cymru wedi dewis gobaith. Mae nhw wedi dewis hyder. Ac maen nhw wedi dewis arweinyddiaeth newydd am y tro cyntaf yn hanes ein democratiaeth ifanc. Ond wrth i'r stori newydd yma gael ei sgwennu, nid heddiw sy'n bwysig mewn difri, ond fori. A'r diwrnod ar ôl hynny, dechrau nid diwedd y daith ydy hyn. Daw dydd y bydd mawr y rhai bychain, meddai Waldo. Wel, mi ddaeth y dydd hwnnw. Y dydd o blannu hedyn y deffroad cenedlaethol bydd yn blaguro yn Gymru falch, hyderus ac uchelgeisiol. Mae Cymru wedi rhoi ei ffydd yn ofni, ac rwan mi fyddwn ni'n dangos ein ffydd yng Nghymru. I dyfu yn genedl decach, mwy cyfiawn a mwy llewyrchus a sy'n barod i sefyll i fyny i San Steffan. In the build-up to this election and in the result itself, Wales demanded change. We could all see it. We could all sense it. Wales demanded a new beginning, and now a new dawn beckons. But we have not yet reached the destination, far from it. We're just setting out on our journey. And we set off with new leadership, with new energy and new ideas. Free to hope, free to aspire, free to dare to demand what Wales rightly deserves. We now need a government which represents the change the people of Wales have voted for, governing with fairness, responsibility, compassion and humility, and with unbounded ambition. That is what we will now strive to build. And we intend to repay that trust placed in Plaid Cymru as quickly as we can. Our missions today are the same as they were last week, last month, last year. Power will not shake our principles or our pledges, cutting waiting lists and building a sustainable health service, creating jobs, raising standards in our schools, helping families with the cost of living, tackling child poverty, and standing up for Wales, always. I now intend to reach out to others who can support these missions with the pace and the seriousness they demand, and to find common ground where we can for the common good. Plaid Cymru will press ahead with those conversations with urgency and put forward my name to be nominated as the next First Minister. I will end with these words. Our nation deserves a government that will work with relentless determination to deliver on the things that matter most to you. We now focus on that task, and we do this for Wales. Dros Gymru. Diolch yn fawr.
And there it is. Just after 6:30, the victory speech by the leader of Plaid Cymru, Rhun ap Iorwerth. And there we have the final tally. As you can see, 43 seats at this newly expanded Senedd for Plaid, 34 for Reform, Labour 9 single figures, Conservatives 7, the Greens 2, and the solitary figure of Jane Dodds for the Liberal Democrats, again, like the last term, with 1 seat there. A speech in which he talked about fairness, opportunity, prosperity, uncompromising and compassion, and then also about reaching out. So it was a combination, Felicity, of vision, but then some of the practicalities of being nominated to First Minister as a party without an overall majority, talking about reaching out, common ground. Conversations will now take place for him to be nominated as First Minister.
Yes, and this is key now, isn't it? It's been an amazing result for Plaid, taking nothing away from that, but 43 seats is not a majority. It certainly puts them in a position to try to govern as a minority government, but they will have to do deals all the time and around some really crucial points like the budget, for example, and that sort of thing. And the Greens and the Lib Dems, even put together, don't get them over the line. So that means they're either looking at Labour or the Conservatives or both. So, Wayne David, Labour's not going to stand in the way of Rhun ap Iorwerth as First Minister now with a mandate like that, are they?
Well, it'll be up to the Labour group to decide what to do. I would be surprised if they did, because there's no doubt about it. But Plaid Cymru have won this election, and all credit to them. And we are in a democratic country. We respect that verdict. I think it's important for us, secondly, to think about how we can ensure that the Senedd operates in a way which helps people of Wales. And therefore, I would imagine that members of the Labour group will be carefully examining what Plaid Cymru are putting forward. And if they are, in their judgment, putting forward measures which will enhance the quality of life of people of Wales, then support will be forthcoming.
But the point is, Wayne, as you know, in a sense, Labour has to support Plaid, doesn't it, on most of this programme, particularly the budget, because the alternative is Reform and the Conservatives, if they were to align themselves. So, in a sense, you know, there's not as much freedom, is there, for the Labour group, as one might think. And that's what Plaid Cymru knows now. It knows that it's in a position of probably a stronger position than it expected to be a week ago.
But nevertheless, if Rian is true to his word and he wants a working relationship, then there has to be give and take. I mean, proportional representation is about building consensus. And I think it would be positive if we work towards consensus wherever possible. There's a progressive majority in the Senate. That's the all-important thing to stress.
That's a big legitimacy thing, isn't it, as well? 'Cause we've
is,
talked a lot
absolutely.
about this earlier.
Yeah.
What if Reform had more seats, but hadn't become the party that could form a government? Yeah. But as it's turned out, this is probably the best Plaid Cymru could have imagined. Biggest vote share, most number of seats, other parties they can do deals with over the forthcoming weeks. I mean, it couldn't get much better for Plaid, given the difficulty of getting close to a majority.
And a final turnout actually confirmed 51.6%, highest ever. So, again, above that
Again,
magic figure of 50%.
Which is good, I think, because, I mean, that reinforces the fact that devolution is a fact of our political life and a positive element of our political life as well, too. And I think, yes, Plaid are in a very strong position. But I think if they want to govern in the best interest of the majority of people of Wales, then I think it's no good for them to say, this is what we are standing for, take it or leave it, because the alternative is terrible. I mean, they need to have a different approach towards politics.
And we should say that the big policy from Plaid was about a more generous childcare package from 9 months of age, and it brings Wales more in line with the generous package in England. We can see some celebratory shots of Rhun ap Iorwerth up in Llandudno, and the celebrations have clearly begun. People have singing there as well. You can see the joy in all their faces. So, in terms of the policy, the childcare, you're not going to get in the way of that.
No, I mean, you make a very, very important point, because, I mean, we are strongly in favour of enhancing the childcare provisions. Our main concern with Plaid was it is quite unrealistic what they were putting forward and hadn't been properly costed.
Yes, well, and Felicity and I have talked about this. Really, we never really got fleshed out this notion of reprioritisation, what exactly they meant at that, what they meant by that. We sort of got a little bit closer with Llyr Griffith, a prominent member of the Plaid team on Walescast one day, when saying, well, there is a list of things we want to do differently. Laura, I'm not entirely sure quite how radical Plaid want to be. You know, I mean, they haven't given us a huge amount, but maybe they do know, they just don't want to say.
I was going to pick up on that, because there's a pattern with other PR systems in Europe where the largest party uses it as an opportunity to shed some of the more ambitious policies, to do deals with other parties. Because, you know, we know how tight the climate is. You know this better than anybody, Fliss, but it gives them an opportunity now to maybe temper some of the spend on a particular policy area and present it as part of a deal with another party in order to get that policy through. It happens everywhere where coalitions and deals are done. I mean, I sound cynical, but that's normal practice in multi-party systems, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the difference is, as we've discussed before, in terms of the whole new voting system and things, it's what people are not used to here, though, isn't it? And that sort of thing, takes some getting used to. And Reform is going to be, one would imagine, a very active and vocal opposition, as opposition parties are supposed to be. You know, that's part of the democratic process. But they will be watching all of this stuff like a hawk, one would imagine, and be trying to apply levels of scrutiny to what they might perceive as Plaid U-turns on manifesto policies.
And I think it would be difficult for the Labour members, small in number though they are, because they want to be constructive and helpful in defence of the people who have elected them, but at the same time they want to present themselves as an opposition to Plaid Cymru. And they won't want to allow all of the opposition to come from the disruptive elements of reform. So they'll have a difficult balancing act to walk.
Who do you think's going to grab hold of the review that you need to do now, Wayne? You know, who's going to lead on this? Because you've lost some big figures, haven't you, from the group who might have really kind of taken this forward strategically. Is it going to be led by MPs or by the group in the Senedd or by the party centrally?
It's difficult to give a definitive answer to this, but one of the lessons which Labour has to learn is that the Senate Labour members and the members of the Westminster Parliament have to work more closely together and have a mutual respect, which hasn't always existed. And that's one of the things which has happened in the past. It happened under Carwyn, for example, very, very well. I was a junior minister at the time. But I mean, I think it's important that the Labour Party does learn that lesson. We have to pull together in a way which hasn't been happening for a number of years now. And that's one of the reasons why Labour has done so badly. The electorate are not stupid. If they see the Labour Party divided and arguing amongst themselves rather than focusing on their priorities, then the party which does that pays a heavy price.
Is there the bandwidth at Westminster to fully engage with the review of what went wrong in Wales, do you think, given the pressure that Keir Starmer's under, and let's be honest, his fight for survival? Like, that's his priority right now, isn't it? Is Keir Starmer wants to keep Keir Starmer in number 10.
One of the things I was touching upon earlier was that initially the Labour government was very pro-devolution, thanks to Sue Gray. But after her departure, there was a retrenching of traditionalism. And that needs to be reopened again. The Labour Party in the UK needs to be far more mindful of Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland and work much more in harmony on a devolution agenda. And that's something which I think could be very, very positive in the new political climate we find ourselves in.
I tell you what, you must be desperately worried about if Wales becomes another Scotland. I mean, it's nearly 20 years since Alex Salmond and the SNP got voted in and he ran a minority government. I mean, as we've just heard from Stephen Messenger, nearly 20 years have gone and they're still there. Indeed. Once you're out, it is hard to get back in.
That's, absolutely. I mean, I remember the situation regarding Westminster elections when we lost the general election. When was it? 2001. I mean, we were nearly 15 years in the wilderness after that. We don't want to make the same mistake again. And that's why it's very, very important, I think, not to have a knee-jerk reaction against doing this, doing that, it'll fix it. This won't be an easy fix. There needs to be a reorientation of relationships and a fundamental rethink in London and in Cardiff Bay about what we mean by devolution and how best we can make it work.
And, you know, I suppose, look, Wayne is talking about how this now small Labour group, 9 members, single figures, how they respond to this Plaid Cymru agenda. And, you know, we're talking about childcare as the other one. So much of the Plaid agenda is actually wrapped up in reviews and things, isn't it? So we don't actually know, do we, specifically yet, where the potential battle lines could be?
No, and there's no doubt at all that Rhyn ap Iorwerth needs some quick wins, doesn't he? He needs something that people feel is different to the 26 years of Labour. And that's quite hard because there's not that many policy differences really between the party, only on the constitutional question. And I guess, you know, I mean, this is speculation, but I guess if he can bring a constitutional gain that has economic import, like, say, the Crown Estate, then that's something to grab hold of, isn't it, and show that there's a money element attached to that. But otherwise, you know, there's not that many opportunities for Rhyn in the first few months of being in government, and he does need something that people can grab hold of and say, this feels different, this feels like a new chapter.
Not least, I think, because, as we discussed earlier, the cost of living crisis has been such a major theme in this campaign, and people do feel as if they have been battered and battered and battered year after year after year with that. And I think there isn't a lot of patience now for, as we've seen with the situation the UK government finds itself in, with parties that come in promising big things and then appear not to deliver them.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting what Simon Hart was saying earlier. I mean, Wayne, you might want to come in on this, but his view was, former Conservative Secretary of State for Wales, was this notion of constantly blaming the Westminster government. He thought the time had sort of passed on that. I mean, I'm not so sure about that. If you're a Plaid Cymru government administration, then, you know, there's going to be lots of that going on, isn't there?
But there's a difference between blame and how the public perceive equity. And I think when you come to things like HS2, I'm sure the public feel that as being fundamentally unfair.
And it's been coming up in focus groups. I mean, we talked to Luke Trill on Walescast a few weeks ago. He did a whole weekend of focus groups, right the valleys, right into West Wales, and said it was spontaneously coming up in focus groups.
Real traction around an issue like that, isn't it?
No, I think that's a fair point. Actually, I mean, there are quite a few areas where I would argue that the Westminster government should have been more sympathetic and more supportive of the Welsh Labour government over the last 18 months and what they have been. And I think that's where lessons have got to be learned. But I think also, if we look at something like the Crown Estate, for example, Labour had it firmly in their manifesto that they want this devolved as a priority. But I think it'd be a mistake to pin too much hope on that, because it will not produce, I don't think, huge resources. You know, the difficult question that a Plaid Cymru-led government will have to do is to confront the difficult issues of education and the health service. You know, and as you say, there are no fundamental differences in approach between what Labour was doing in Wales under Eluned Morgan and what
Well,
want to do now.
Do you know what? We haven't actually spoken a great deal about the NHS today, and it sort of did it dominate? I mean, it nearly dominated so many of the debates. And partly, I have to say, the parties were all going round in circles. What Reen was saying, and Eluned, and indeed Reform, actually, it was surgical hubs and all this stuff, you know, trying to improve patient flow. I mean, hard yards, Wayne, isn't it? Very difficult.
It is hard, because the fundamental fact is that Wales has an ageing population. And the comparisons which are frequently made between Wales and England in terms of health are not valid, quite frankly, because Wales is a far poorer country, it's a far more elderly country than if you look at England as a whole. It's far better to look at Wales compared to the northeast of England, and there the comparisons are not that stark. So what I'm saying is that things are going to be very, very difficult for the health service, whoever is in power, and we need to recognise that. And frankly, there's an area for common ground to be established, a recognition, a reconnaissance that things are not going to be put right easily. It's a long-term process, and we need to have a consensual approach to getting things better.
We should talk about Eluned Morgan. Yes. How long was she First Minister? 2 years? Coming up to 2 years? Not a huge amount of time. Laura magnanimously said earlier, actually, pretty battling performance. I'm not sure. I think you said, I want to misquote you, they're not sure what she could have done, actually.
I just don't think she should carry the blame for this election. It goes much deeper, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Eluned did the best that she could. And I thought she fought an excellent election campaign. Energy was second to none, I think. And I think, you know, the problems that Labour was up against are at a UK level, but also Welsh level, and go back a long time. And it simply wasn't possible for Eluned, no matter how hard she tried, and she did try extremely hard, to put things right in a relatively short space of time.
Well, actually, talk about the NHS. She's left not a bad legacy for Plaid to continue, which is, I mean, I appreciate after many years, but waiting list coming down,
for 9 consecutive months.
She continuously reminded us.
You took the words right out of my mouth there, because, you know, in terms of quick wins and things that Plaid might be able to boast about, there is now a trend of reducing waiting times, right? So Plaid can try to ride that wave in the same way that the Keir Starmer government rode the wave of declining immigration figures, which had actually been set up by Rishi Sunak before Keir Starmer came in, you know. So, you know, that's a well-worn political trick of the new government sort of taking the credit for something that was sort of been put in place by the predecessors. But, you know, maybe they need a little more than that.
I think there's a statement, actually, from Eluned Morgan, as we're talking about her, which we can potentially bring up. And there she goes. That was part of her speech that she gave earlier. Being First Minister of Wales has been the privilege of my life, and particularly so as the first woman to lead this nation. I was always clear that this election was about Wales, and Keir Starmer was not on the ballot. I'm taking responsibility, and I'm resigning. That's what she said earlier in her resignation speech. Yes, effectively, what you're saying, Laura, there was an oil tanker, and it's very difficult to turn it in the form of public opinion.
Yes, for sure. And I just think that there's a real risk for Welsh Labour, because we've heard it a few times with our guests today. Starting this review at Caerphilly will never deliver the kind of structural analysis of what's gone wrong for the party, and it's the same if you start the review of what's gone on for Welsh Labour with Eluned Morgan. you're missing a big chunk of it. Yeah. And it was really interesting. When we started off this morning, or whenever it was, Labour representatives were saying the problem was in the Caerphilly by-election, we had 2 blocks vote against reform, and from there on in, it's been impossible to penetrate. But that's just a little part of the problem, quite frankly. The problems in Welsh Labour go much deeper, and they have to be dealt with if the party's going to reinvent itself.
Right. Thank you all. Wayne, thanks very much indeed. Wayne David, former MP for Caerphilly. Let's go back to the Bay and catch up with Teleri.
Thank you so much, Nick. Well, the sun is beginning to set on this momentous day and on the Senedd that's just going into shadow behind us. Wow, what a day. Where do we begin? We've got 3 esteemed guests here to try and make sense of this historic day. Jack Larner, Cardiff University, Des Clifford, former head of the First Minister's Office, and Joe Kiernan, political consultant. Also used to be a SPAD in the government, didn't you? Jack, let's start with you. What do you think has happened? So the polling-wise, this is beyond what Plaid Cymru had hoped for, isn't it?
Well, I think actually in terms of the polling average, it's slightly, but in terms of the last YouGov poll, it's essentially exactly right, exactly for both Reform and for Plaid Cymru. Conservatives doing a little bit better than expected, Labour a little bit worse even then than they expected, not to get into double digits, but yes. In terms of the average, YouGov seemed to have been really well, some other pollsters seem to have been doing really, really well, but in terms of the last 3 months, this is well beyond something that I think we thought we would see.
A few people have said to me today that actually the tide turned last night, and some people were really wrestling with this decision, and last night broke for Plaid Cymru, decided to go against. They'd already probably privately decided not to vote Labour, but decided rather than going Green, decided to go Plaid Cymru. So to be fair to the pollsters, if people are making their decisions that late on.
Well, in just the last 3 days or 4 days, the polls did pick up a bit of a switch where Plaid did seem to get a little bit of a clear water between them and Reform. And yes, you're right, the majority of undecided voters were previously Labour supporters, and I think Labour had always hoped these people would come back to them, but no, it seems like, when push comes to shove, that tactical message really caught on the last few days when people really, really switched on, I think, and actually realised the election was very, very close, and therefore majority of those seem to have broken for Plaid Cymru.
Joe, I'll come to you next, just to kind of post-mortem on Labour. How are people within the Labour Party feeling today?
I think they're feeling devastated. You're going to be, aren't you? You've pounded the streets, you've put your all into the campaign. At the stage of polling day, you would be exhausted and a bit emotional anyway, and then to face this. And I think, Jack talking about the polls, there were Labour promises from 2 days ago when they went and knocked on doors yesterday. They said, we've got to keep Reform out, we're voting Plaid Cymru. It was that visceral reaction of people actually going to the polling booth and saying, do you know what, there was that poll 10 days ago that put Reform ahead of Plaid Cymru. That
was a gift to Plaid Cymru, wasn't it?
And that squeeze message really, really worked. So there are a lot of people in Welsh Labour with very sore hearts tonight.
Des Clifford, I've been looking forward to speaking to you all day, and I'm glad you're here today because at this late stage in the day, because you've got a real insight into the way, now the mechanics of the government switches in to play. This result for Plaid Cymru makes it much easier, doesn't it, than some of the permutations that we had in the polling where it was much closer?
Yeah, I think from a point of view of governing Wales, I think this is a much more stable result than some of the possibilities if it had been a more mixed set of results. So I think from that neutral's perspective...
Plaid Cymru's legitimacy to govern in this instant isn't up for question, is
yeah,
it?
only Rhun ap Iorwerth can be the First Minister. There's no pathway for anybody else. That's just very clear from the results that we've got. And there might be a bit of jiggery-pokery before people sort of want to fully accept that, but I think that's the only possible outcome. And I guess over the weekend, political parties will start talking to each other and talking among themselves about how they're going to manage their business when they start to collect here in the next couple of days.
Because it looks like, from what we can see at the moment, that Plaid Cymru will be able to to some extent go it alone, but have a kind of loose deal with other parties. They won't necessarily need a formal partnership or a coalition.
One of the good things that successive Welsh Labour governments have done throughout the devolution period is show that there are different methods of reaching out to working with other parties, and we've had examples.
In Welsh, we say "sawl ffordd o gael wili weli,"
yeah,
don't we?
union, exactly, yeah. And you know, you can do it through formal coalitions, or you can do it through a whole range of less formal arrangements. So I think Plaid will be looking at some of those models. You only really need to win one vote in a year, essentially, to manage the Senate, which is the budget. That's the piece of business that you cannot lose, because your government ends if you can't do that. So I think there's plenty of options for Plaid to talk to Labour, to Lib Dems and Greens, and to keep themselves afloat and form a stable administration. And they should want to reach out and work with other parties as well, because you'd hope so. It's the spirit of devolution.
Well, we saw earlier David Tristan and Hewi Ranker Davis walking off together. So if that's anything to go by, then that is potentially a good sign. Jack, we'll probably overuse it already, but this is a historic result. What are your reflections at the end of today?
Yeah, well, for 5 of the parties, it's historic. First ever Green representation, the worst ever Conservative result, worst ever Labour's, all of them are really surprising. Well, not surprising, but historic, momentous, whatever you decide to say. I think for Labour, we look at, in terms of vote share in any Welsh election, actually, since 1906 is their lowest ever. And that's actually before the Labour Party were called the Labour Party. That's how long back you have to go to get a vote share this low. That's pretty historic. This is the largest right or small c Conservative bloc we've ever had in the Senedd. So Reform, for the first time, shown that there's a viable right-wing party in Wales. We've never really had that before either. But yeah, I suppose remarkably, it has to be focused on, for me, it has to be Plaid Cymru being the largest party, and in the end, not that close. Right? They've got a pretty big gap in terms of seats, a fairly big gap in terms of the vote share. So like you say, that cements them quite clearly as the party which will be leading the next government. But also key, the only arithmetic which really gets them over that line of a majority will be Plaid and Labour. And like we've said, the end result, the end working arrangement between them is going to be something to watch over the next few weeks.
Is that problematic, do you think? Well, I'll put this to all three of you to a certain extent, because this has been a change election. The optics of Plaid Cymru being seen to be, we know what Reform and the Tories will say, that they are getting into bed together and they are propping each other up. That's problematic for Labour and for Plaid Cymru.
Well, look, this is the reality of our electoral system. People don't understand it. No party is going to get a majority if we stick with this system, and there's a question mark over that. It's just grown-up politics. And I think that Rhys Iorwerth has made it very clear he wants to lead a minority government initially. Like Des, I just don't think that's going to be stable over the longer term, particularly when it comes to certain bits of legislation and budgets. But there are all kinds of options. And let's forget, the Labour Party needs to regroup. It won't want to be doing any deals. Eluned Morgan has had a really tough day. She's resigned as party leader. There'll be an election for a new leader. We're talking months down the line before there could be any kind of even cooperation agreement. And I don't think it would be needed, actually, until towards the end of the year in that budget. So I just think cool heads, deep breaths, let's get on and do it sensibly.
Shall we get on to some of that kind of leadership race speculation? Who are the runners and riders, would you say? Because, this group is much smaller than they expected, isn't it? They've got much fewer people to choose from than they thought they would.
It's much smaller. And look, there are going to be discussions. There's a group meeting tomorrow. There'll be discussions about, who will be interim leader, I think. I personally think that an election for a new Labour leader is needed, that party membership should have a say in that. And, there are some, steady hands who might want to go, who've been in this place before. There are a couple of newbies who might think that, actually, if you're looking at that change and the new generation, those messages that didn't really resonate throughout the campaign, but that now might be the point to actually take that forward. But, there's been a lot of talk, too, about Keir Starmer should go, yada, yada, yada. I just think, it's a bit like when you're writing an email in anger and you think, no, I'm not going to send it, I'm going to wait a day or two. This is what we need to do at the minute. I just think, take a step back. We need to have a really good look at what went wrong. And it was a perfect storm in many ways, but we can rebuild.
What do you make of that, guys? Is it very briefly then?
Look, I just don't. I wonder what the appetite for a leadership election will be straight away. I think that this is a very Labour are going to be really hurt by this. The emotional shock of being not just the second largest party, the third largest party. In terms of vote share, I'm not actually sure whether it's essentially tied or the Conservatives just squeaked ahead in terms of seats. This is a huge change for them, really not just from what's happening here, but in Scotland it's not gone well, in England it's gone really, really badly as well. So yes, a period of reflection I think is inevitable, but what the outcome of that is, I have no idea. I think.
Des, in terms of being a civil servant now, if you're in the civil service, you know, the civil servants in the Senedd have never seen a change of government like this. How momentous is that? How will they manage?
Yeah, it's a big deal. You're absolutely right, because Labour have kept coming back from previous elections. You had really the same group or a similar group of ministers coming back, and people knew the ropes, and so it was a relatively undramatic sequence of events for civil servants. Plaid will need the civil service much more, and the civil service will need to rise to the challenges. So I think it will be challenges for the civil service and challenges for Plaid as well. My guess is that not more than 3 or 4 of Plaid's ministerial team will ever have been into a Welsh Government building, for example. So it'll be, and I suppose there are many members who've never even been into the building behind us. So I think there is an awful lot of work to be done in a logistical sense in the days and weeks ahead.
Well, we will be watching it closely. Jack, Des and Joe, very familiar faces to audiences on Politics Wales, which will be on air on Sunday, of course, at 10 with an hour-long programme to mop this all up. But for now, back to you, Nick.
To Larry, thank you very much indeed. I feel like we should talk a bit about reform, actually, because we've been focusing on some of the other parties. It's a Friday night. We're going to think about who's going to have the biggest party tonight. I mean, it'll be Plaid Cymru, obviously. Labour will be having effectively a wake. But there'll be a pretty big party for Reform UK, won't they? They've ended up with 34 seats, Laura. I mean...
Yeah, look, 34 seats, 29% of the vote. That is a very good night for a party that has only been in existence for 2 years. But, and this is the but, the problem is, of course, they'd set the bar higher and articulated that earlier today, even in terms of hopes of being the party with the most seats or the party with the biggest vote share. I don't think they were ever going to do that, but the narrative was that that was possible. And of course, if that had been the case and Plaid Cymru had been the second largest party in terms of vote share, but could still progress towards forming a government, it would have given that narrative of grievance and being shut out on a plate to reform. And that's probably why they're feeling a little bit ambivalent about how the results have gone. But make no mistake, this is a fantastic result for a new party.
And we got
across Wales.
With hindsight, we got a little sense of it earlier when we spoke to Dan Thomas, didn't we? And we said, well, when is Nigel coming down? Yeah. And he didn't, he just prevaricated a bit.
He was coming in. Oh, look who's just walked back in. Gareth Lewis. We're just talking about, you know, what an incredible achievement it is for Reform, coming second as main party, getting 34 seats, second in vote share, when it barely existed 2 years ago. It's built up its party infrastructure really in the blink of an eye.
I have just been having the same conversation with a Reform representative on the way in, and yeah, I mean, look, it is an incredible achievement to come from, well, almost literally nothing 5 years ago in 2021 to where they are today. Look, I think, did they at one point earlier this week oversell themselves a little when Dan Thomas talked about the potential for getting a majority, which is almost impossible under this system? But nonetheless, you know, a majority was always incredibly unlikely. But second biggest party, the official opposition, comfortably now in a new Senedd.
But what it has done, that Laura's just sort of hinted at there, what this result has done, though, is robbed them of the chance to shout stitch up.
Yeah, it has, yeah. And that, I thought that was quite interesting. They clearly had seen a scenario whereby they would be shut out by an amalgamation of left-leaning parties, but Plaid have done exactly what they needed to do, which was to comfortably be the biggest party that precludes that.
We have a guest who's joined us in the studio.
You sound surprised.
Former Labour First Minister, Cadwyn Jones. Look, I'm going to start off by not talking about the Labour soul-searching, because we've done plenty of that. Rhys ap Iorwerth is going to become First Minister. You were in that position once. What does he need to know? Give us, what's the first thing? If you had to give him some advice, if he phoned you up tonight and said, Cadwyn, give me a bit of advice, what would you say to him?
First thing to do is to balance your cabinet. Get as many people of talent in as possible. and learn how to manage people. That's quite difficult when you've got strong characters in the cabinet. You've got to do that. Secondly, he will want to start very, very quickly. The danger always is if you promise too much at the beginning, people soon become disillusioned. It's really important to provide a direction, although I'm not sure he wants my advice on this, but you need to provide a direction and then say, OK, this is where we're going. We can't get there overnight, but this nevertheless is our plan.
How difficult is it to, mobilise the civil servants, get them to do different things and get them to effectively follow your way, bearing in mind it's going to be a different party?
There's some myths about the civil service that they're there to obstruct. They're not. I've dealt with them, and I've seen the civil service in Wales develop over the past 27 years from a bit of a backwater. The Welsh office was a little bit of a backwater. There wasn't much happening in the Welsh office, really, to a much more dynamic organisation. A lot of young people came in because they really wanted to work for the Welsh Government, wouldn't have wanted to work for the Welsh office. And it's not a big civil service, really. It's not got much depth to it. But certainly I had civil servants, so I thought they were excellent and they were really enthusiastic. It'll be new for them. They'll have a new set of ministers, a new, well, not a new party, because Plaid had been in government before, but yeah, yes, the civil servants will say to you, look, we are there to try to help you do what you want to do.
But he would be under pressure that you didn't have, did you, in the sense that you followed other... I mean, obviously you were under pressure in the position, but you followed other Labour First Ministers. This is the first Plaid Cymru-led government. He's going to want to make a splash, isn't he?
Yeah, but you want to make a splash when you come in as a leader. Whatever happens, when I took over from Rodri, I wanted to create my own government. I wanted to make a splash. Yes, you did carry on with some of the things that you'd done before, but you want to carve out a position for yourself, a niche for yourself, and that's what I did. So it's not simply a question of, okay, somebody from my party was First Minister before, so I can just carry on, slot in and carry on. That's not the way it works.
Can I ask you a question as well? Look, you're talking about making a splash. In the climate we're in at the moment, look what happened with Labour after the 2024 general election. Elected on a promise of change, have arguably been judged by the electorate not to have delivered that. Is it a prerequisite to make a splash? Does Plaid now need something in short order that it can hold up and say, change, this is the change we've brought?
You need optimism, and that's not what happened after the general election in 2024. You need a clear direction. You need to be able to tell people what you're planning to do, and you need to be careful in terms of the choices that you make. There's no point being in government if you're all doom and gloom. And unfortunately, that is what happened after 2024 in London. There was no sense of, look, things are bad, but this is the way out. That second bit wasn't articulated properly. So I think people are patient. People they want things to change, but they understand they can't change overnight. But they do want to know that whoever's in government has a plan for change and they understand it. And that's the key.
What's the future for Keir Starmer? Do you have a view on whether he should stay for a while and then go? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think there's any one reason why we saw the result we did today. There are several reasons. Elena has taken responsibility herself. That's a brave thing to do, but there are other factors as well. It's the zeitgeist. It's people. There was a sense of change in the air that you can't defeat at times.
How many beatings can he take before he just looks like a dying duck in a snowstorm?
Not many more. We can't carry on like this. I mean, this is not a midterm blip. The last time we lost an election in Wales was in 1918. This is not something that is something you can account as being part of the normal midterm blues of a government. We've seen what's happened in Scotland. We've seen what's happened in England. There's got to be a change. And we need to be radical. We can't just say to people, "Well, we'll try and make your lives."
Are you saying change of leader or change of approach now? When you say
I would say first of all a change of approach.
Right. Okay.
That's essential, because you can't just say to people, "Well, we'll make things okay in a few years, or we'll change things a little bit now." People want radical change. People are hurting, and they want radical change. And they are then, of course, prey to, I would say, to Reform, who offer all manner of ideas that aren't costed. But people will say, "Well, it doesn't matter about that. Let's give them a go."
So how long has he got, do you think, to convince, apart from anything, his own backbenchers that he's capable of delivering this change?
It's very, very difficult to know the answer to that question. I don't know what will happen in Westminster over the course of the next few weeks. He will have to show that he understands this, that this is not simply a question of let's carry on as before. There needs to be a radical change, and Keir does need to demonstrate he can do that.
Can I ask you, look, I know you're not a frontline politician anymore, but you look at what's happened. You look at what's happened here today.
Yeah.
Do you think some responsibility for that? Do you think, you know, you look at the failure of delivery of public services over the years?
Well, if it was that bad, we wouldn't have won elections. I keep on saying that to people. There's this narrative, 27 years of failure. Well, hang on a second. If people felt that, they wouldn't have kept us in office. And I can list a list of things that we did when I was in government. The reality is that all of us in Welsh Labour have to look carefully at what we do now. The last thing we should do is start fighting with each other and start pointing fingers between Cardiff and Westminster. The last thing we should do is think that there's an easy answer to all this. You know, oh, well, you know, if we do this, then everything will be fine. This is going to take a cool analysis to make sure that what has been a hugely difficult night, that there are lessons learned and we know what the way forward is going to be. That's not going to happen overnight.
But isn't that exactly what has happened up until now, Carwyn? You know, knives out between MPs and the Senedd group, decisions being made that were patently not the decisions of the Welsh Party, Welsh Labour manifesto being ignored in terms of requests to UK Labour, and all of that contextualised by the partnership of power that was advertised in the election. So why didn't it happen sooner? Because these elections were on the horizon as soon as Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. You know, surely Welsh Labour deserved a helping hand to face what they were facing.
There was help in terms of the money. The financial situation is better. The money that came for the railways, for example, all that was good. Wilverby was good.
But not good enough to satisfy.
Well, that therein lays the rub. There's always been tension between Cardiff and Westminster because it's inevitable. When I was First Minister, we managed all that. You know, if there were some issues, we'd deal with them there and then. It's not been good. It's not been good in the last 2 years, and it should have been a lot better because the situation financially was a lot better than it was when I was First Minister. I mean, cuts every single year, and that's why I say to my colleagues both in Cardiff and in Westminster, now is not the time to say it's all your fault or it's all your fault. That takes us nowhere.
I'm told we're losing you. You're required elsewhere. Carwyn Jones, former First Minister. Thank you very much indeed. Right, let's leave the studio for a minute, get a final broader perspective and join Shelley Phelps at Westminster.
Hi Nick, well here in Westminster the Prime Minister is vowing not to walk away from the job, saying that to do so would leave the country in chaos. He is though not short of advice on what Labour needs to do now, not least from Eluned Morgan, who in her speech talked about how UK Labour needs to go back to being the party of the working class. She'd said that they needed to change course. She didn't go as far as calling for Keir Starmer to resign like some of her colleagues have. For example, Mick Anthony, former Welsh Labour government minister, saying that this election had been more about immigration and Downing Street than about Wales. In terms of what I'm hearing from Welsh MPs, I think the prevailing view is that they don't want to see a challenge to Keir Starmer right now, and they don't think that that's likely to happen. There's deep anger, deep unhappiness, but they seem to want to be airing their concerns privately rather than going public with them. Having said that, though, there has been some MPs of ours on the airwaves. So the Labour MP Ruth Jones, chair of the Welsh Select Committee, she has told Times Radio that the Prime Minister must consider his position. She said that the wounded Starmer should be more reticent about what he's saying about carrying on forever, though she stopped short of calling for a timetable for his departure. Another Labour MP who didn't want to be named, I asked them if they thought Keir Starmer would lead them into the next general election. They told me that they thought that was highly unlikely. The other big question, of course, is we're going to now see a changing relationship between government in Cardiff Bay and Westminster. Of course, the argument here from the Labour government in Westminster, you know, they talked about the benefits of two Labour governments working together, what that had done for increases in money for public services. Plaid Cymru and Rhys Iorwerth now looking to be the next First Minister. They, during this campaign, he pledged to stand up to Keir Starmer, talked about wanting to see a reset in relations. Of course, speaking to Plaid Cymru sources, they're going to be, you know, pushing their calls for more devolution on things like policing, which the government here have rejected. So it is going to be a big change.
3 million.
OK, Shelley Phelps from Downing Street. Thank you very much for everything we've had from you today. Right, I feel like we should go to Daniel Davies next and get a final tally from our wonderful virtual reality room in terms of what this new Senedd is going to look like. Dan.
Well, this has been a historic victory for Plaid Cymru, and if we bring up the scoreboard, you can see it's a pretty decisive one as well. 43 seats under the leadership of Rhun ap Iorwerth, comfortably more than all of their rivals, and the day started out pretty well for them. The first constituency to declare was down in the southeast of Wales. We'll bring up the map to show you, Casnewydd Islwyn. And now, although Reform topped the poll here, winning 2 seats, Plaid Cymru won 2 as well. And if we show you the share of the vote, you'll see it was a pretty close race. Plaid Cymru were only 3 points behind Reform UK in a seat where if Reform was going to win, they needed to win here. Their leader, Dan Thomas, was a candidate here, and Plaid weren't far behind. Labour pushed into third in a seat that we would normally consider a Labour heartland. Let's go further west to Sir Gaerfyrddin. And this is the kind of territory that has been a Labour Plaid Cymru battleground in recent years, but no sign of Labour in the seats won. Look, 3 for Plaid Cymru, topping the poll, 3 for Reform UK. We'll bring up the share of the vote, and Labour are way behind in Sir Gaerfyrddin. It looks very much like what is happening here is that voters on the left of politics have left Labour behind in this election. They've piled into Plaid Cymru. Perhaps they were swayed by that message that you needed to vote Plaid to stop Reform. But what's gone on up in one of Plaid's heartland seats, Gwynedd Maldwyn, the biggest seat in this, the biggest constituency in this election, where Plaid Cymru has topped the poll and won 4 seats. This is the only constituency in Wales that's going to send 4 members of the same party to the Senedd, and they are Plaid Cymru Senedd members. So back in the Senedd, this is how things look. We'll swing over to the Plaid benches and just see how much green there is. We are used to seeing a lot of red here, with Labour dominating politics in Cardiff Bay. But in this election, this historic election, Labour has been pushed aside, and you can see it's Plaid Cymru that is now by far the biggest party. They haven't quite won an outright majority. I mean, given the circumstances, though, you'd have to say they've come pretty close. Given the electoral system to win 43 seats, you can see in our coalition builder that they got quite close to that 49-seat threshold. But if they're going to win those crucial votes, if they are to form a government, those votes on winning budgets, getting budgets through, or legislating, they're going to need the support or the assistance of some other Senedd members. If we bring Labour in on that left-wing bloc, you can see that they exceed that threshold of 49. They go up to 52. So there we have it. Plaid Cymru in a very strong position, you'd have to say, to form a minority government here in the Senedd under the leadership of Rhun ap Iorwerth.
Daniel Davies, thank you very much indeed. And there is the final tally. Right, and we just have a final few minutes with the team here to reflect on everything that we've had today. And Fliss, it's been an amazing day.
It truly has. You know, we're over-inclined to use superlatives as journalists, but today truly deserves it. Historic, a once-in-a-century event to see Labour more than decimated, you know, in the patch it's dominated for 100 years. Plaid, a first too, because it is going to lead a government, and a first too for the Greens getting their first representation in there, and an incredible achievement from Reform to go from virtually nothing to second largest party.
Laura, we should touch on the decimation, actually, of that Labour vote and the degree to which it collapsed.
Very much at the extreme end of what we expected. I think we all knew that this was going to be an incredibly hard election for Welsh Labour for all the reasons that we've rehearsed all day. They'd been usurped as sort of leader of that left bloc that Plaid Cymru has now taken over. They were facing insurgent Reform, and they knew how hard that was going to be. They'd been in power for so long that people were tired, the incumbency hit, if you like. And there was just a sense about the party that they didn't expect to do well in this election. But the campaign suggested it could be not quite as bad as this, but it's proved to be absolutely dreadful. It couldn't have been much worse, in all honesty.
Yeah, and Guy, I thought it was interesting talking to Carwyn Jones there, and you get a sense, actually, it's difficult for Rhun ap Iorwerth, isn't it? Look, it's a lovely position that he wants to be. He's set to be the next First Minister of Wales, wants to make a splash. Financial constraints, not a huge amount of time when you think about it, but it's a position he would love to be in.
Yeah, he's in his dream position, Nick. He's exactly where he's wanted to be, a position that perhaps, you know, if you look back at history, he thought he might never have been in. But here we are. Things have changed so quickly in such a short space of time. The only area where I might, if I'm allowed to, disagree with Carwyn Jones is I'm not sure how patient voters are at the moment. When we saw what happened in 2024, the general election with Labour, I don't want to heap pressure on Rhun ap Iorwerth in his moment of victory, but how much time will Plaid get to make that tangible, discernible change? And I do think they're going to need to be able to shout about something or some things to say to voters, hey, look, we really have made a difference. We promised you change. We've brought change. And X, Y, Z, this is how we've done it.
Well, I'm sorry to talk about the public like this, but voters, maybe we all are, fickle and impatient these days.
Because people have been really suffering. I mean, really, since 2008, people have seen their real earnings eroded against cost of living. And since the end of 2021, they've had it with bells on. And people feel kind of at the end of their tether, I think, in terms of that. And they feel that their lives are getting worse as a result. And they want to see some relief.
And Plaid is helped by the fact this is a good victory. Make no mistake about it. The parties on the left have got 55 seats. The parties on the right, 41. So there's no legitimacy issues here. Whatever deals Plaid does, there's an authority and a mandate for it because that's the way the votes have been cast. And this is right at the top end of what Plaid would have expected to get in this election, just like it's right at the bottom end for Labour. So that gives them something really positive to start with.
Sure. And look, his party will love him. The Plaid Cymru faithful, of course they will. To what extent do you think of the voters lent Plaid their support, or have they actually made that leap?
I think that will come out in the wash when we look at how people have voted and the reasons why. I think it's a bit of both. You know, I haven't bought at any point today the argument that this is all about people lending their vote to Plaid just to beat reform. It's about more than that, but that's an element of it. But if Labour thinks that's all it is, then that's not a healthy basis to try and rebuild its own support. I think people have voted Plaid because there's a progressive bloc in Welsh politics that now Plaid Cymru owns ahead of Labour. That's the primary reason. And they also think that Plaid is probably best placed to speak up for Wales in a difficult UK political context.
And that first meeting between Rhun ap Iorwerth and Keir Starmer. Love to be a fly on the wall in there because that's going to be quite key, I think, and it'll set the tone, the temperature, and perhaps what comes Wales's way for the years to come.
Well, at some point as well, he's going to be putting a phone call into John Swinney as well, isn't he? First time the UK has seen nationalist leaders in Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland.
And they will work together, Nick, on areas where they have common ground to present a united front, if you like, in their representations to the UK government. Fascinating times, it really is.
It really is. I mean, on that, you know, the independence agenda, obviously Plaid has to do deals with some unionist parties, so his hands might be a bit tied.
We'll have to leave it there. Guys, thank you very much indeed. So, after 27 years with Labour at the helm in the Welsh Government, a historic changing of the guard. With Plaid Cymru winning the most seats in the Senedd and the number of Labour members of the Senedd being decimated. Now the work begins for Plaid Cymru of forming a government. Thank you so much for joining us throughout the day. Have a great night.
Pauli. In this series, I'm going to be travelling along 4 of Wales's longest river valleys, from tidal shores to mountain streams. And this is what most people would think of as an abandoned bit of wasteland. But do you know what it's not? Oh, there he goes, look at that. I'll get to see the fascinating wildlife living there. Wow, OK. Any journey where you see otter is a journey worth doing.
Iolo's River Valleys continues Wednesday at 7 on BBC One Wales and iPlayer.
We might find that kid who's got the raw talent in a back street in Preston somewhere.
Look, the thing is...
We're moving back to Barry.
What?
I'm in Shetland.
You went how?
I did.
So where are you from, then?
The Glens of Antrim.
Lovely part of the world.
You'll always be my home.
What could a Victorian gentleman and a crook possibly have in common?
I was caught by news of this here show with double crossings and murders.
You must join us this evening.
Nothing brings us together like great TV.
Those tweed jackets really are to die for, aren't they?
A little change now to the schedule on BBC One Wales with post-election analysis in a Question Time special.
But this is how it works. Tonight we are live from central London as the huge scale of political change across the United Kingdom becomes clear. For the first time in a century, Labour have lost a national election in Wales. Plaid Cymru are now the biggest party. In Scotland, the SNP are the biggest party there. In England, Labour have suffered terrible losses in the